welcome to A Stab in the Dark, a horror movie podcast. Each week we take a look at a horror movie. Could be anything from the history of it. And this week we're looking at Midsommar. So I'm joined by my expert friends, as I'm pretty much a layman. We've got Mike. Hi, Mike.
Hello.
And
you may remember Dave. Me from last week.
Yeah. We've got
very presumptuous, Mike. You're not the fan favourite yet.
No, well, I mean, it's up for the audience to decide, isn't it? So.
And we have Dave. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Joe. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about this.
It should be good.
Today.
It should be really good. I've watched it for the first time. I'm sure maybe it hasn't for you, but you've probably seen it before, right?
Well, I absolutely love Midsommar. It's I'm a big fan of the director. I loved his previous movie, Hereditary. I didn't like Midsommar as much at first, but it's a movie I've never been able to get out of my head since first watching. And on every single watch, I like it more and more. And honestly, right now, I don't know if I could pick between the two of them. There's so much kind of depth in the writing. There's so much to talk about with the characters, and there's some great gore. So I'm really excited to get into it.
Right, Mike, you?
I share a lot of those opinions. I personally still think Hereditary is his best movie, but Midsommar is a brilliant movie of itself. After Wicker Man, I'd say it's probably second best folk horror of all time, in my personal opinion. I think it's brilliant. I think just the sheer fact alone that I can watch a horror movie that's 2 hours, 45 minutes with the director's cut and still think it holds the tension and holds my attention and is just successful at being a horror movie for that length of time is a triumph, and it should be celebrated for that. So
yeah, I have to say I was sort of enthralled by it throughout. My first watch, I watched the theatrical version, and that 2 hours 20 just went so quickly. There was so much in there, and I was like, wow, this is definitely going to be a rewatch. Yeah, it was fantastic. And then watched the director's cut, and was even more ingrained in it, and there's so much in there to discuss, which we will at length, I'm sure. So then, Dave, you want to go into the background? I know you've done a bit of research on the background of Midsommar, how it came about, so go for it.
Yeah, well, actually, since we're talking about Hereditary, this was produced off the back of Hereditary. It's actually released just a year afterwards, right, in 2019.
Oh, really?
Hereditary was 2018. Yeah, it was a very quick turnaround.
Yeah, in the behind the scenes that I watched, he basically didn't have time to fully appreciate the overwhelming critical and commercial response for Hereditary because he went straight back into the writer's room and got work on Midsommar. Yeah.
So Hereditary was a massive critical and commercial success for A24, and it became its highest grossing film worldwide, apparently grossing 80 million, which is actually not a lot of money, but that just, I mean, for A24, that's...
It's not bad.
Yeah.
Horror movies in general are not bad.
Compared to budget, yeah.
Yes, it was greenlit on May 18th, 2018, and premiered June 18th, 2019. So what's that, 13 months? Nuts, right? Nuts.
Yeah, it's a crazy turnaround,
It's
especially
a great turnaround,
off the back
especially
of another.
For the film, like how good the film
how
is.
grand in scope it is,
Yeah.
especially as in interviews he said basically his original cut before he had to trim it down to the theatrical and then back slightly up to the director's cut was about 4 hours long.
Oh man,
So
release that. Release the director's cut. That's what I want to say.
Well, he did also say nobody wants to see that, but I do. But yeah, that's 2 movies worth of length shot in that time. Never mind all the work that went into the production design and all of that kind of stuff, which it took insane amounts of people's time.
So he was approached actually by a Stockholm production company called Be Real, 2 executives from there. And he was actually asked to helm a slasher movie. But he felt that he couldn't find a way into a slasher story himself. And so, actually, basically, because he was going through a really, really bad breakup himself, he wrote himself into the movie. And through that lens of that breakup, he was able to, kind of layer that breakup across the kind of structure of a slasher movie. He's apparently described it as a breakup movie dressed in the clothes of a folk horror film. So maybe we can introduce folk horror real quick. Maybe we talked about it in the introduction, but maybe Mike.
It's basically characterized by a bunch of quote unquote city people or modern people, typical people of the time, going out into the countryside of, it used to be most of the time England, but in the case of this movie, it's Sweden. And the cultures are alien to them. The way they're treated is alien to them. They usually meet it with some degree of friction, and then slowly and surely you begin to realize that whether they resist against it or try to go with it, there's some darkness underneath the surface of what they're dealing with here. Yeah.
Yeah, it was basically my intro to folk horror, other than The Wicker Man. That's the only other one I've actually seen. Other than, potentially, you could say Men.
Yeah, I mean,
It's got that folk horrorness to
Men's
it.
a folk
Yeah,
horror.
I'd agree that is folk horror. Yeah.
But overall, I think this is probably the third folk horror, so I'm not got the most experience on it. But
it's quite interesting though, because as a subgenre, it was invented quite a while after the movies that popularized its style. So, Wicker Man's it popularized it, but it's not the first. There's a movie with Vincent Price called Witchmaster General, which is also brilliant and extremely bloody and brutal for 1968. And then there's also Japanese movies. Onibaba is one of those that basically are folk horrors, but it's before they invented the term. It took a long while for the term to be something that people used to describe a movie. Yeah,
interesting.
I have another quote here from Aster, which we can kind of come back to as we talk through the plot. But he's called it "The Wizard of Oz for perverts."
It's funny actually, because in my notes I was watching it, and I did sort of see when I was watching it when they first go into the area. What's it, the farm or whatever it's called?
Or the commune.
The commune, yeah. When they first go into the commune, it's like it's almost a studio set. The buildings to me gave off like a studio set type vibe, and almost too perfect. A bit like how the Wizard of Oz is quite obviously part studio, and the buildings in there aren't all real. I got that vibe from immediately. I've written it down in my notes. I know that this is giving me Wizard of Oz. Oh, I can't say the bloody word. Wizard of Oz vibes.
It makes it quite fantastical in the fact that all he had to start with was a patch of grass in Hungary, and him and his crew obviously built all of those rooms, those buildings from scratch. Everything was there as part of the production.
I think it was like an $8 million budget as well, which is nothing.
Yeah,
Insane.
not in modern film. So do you agree with that then?
Well,
about it being Wizard of Oz for perverts?
I thought it was very interesting.
It's definitely fairy tale in nature.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's. I mean, it is through a certain lens a fairy tale story. I mean, we'll talk about the ending, at the right time. There's a lot to say. And I think definitely after hearing that quote, then watching it again, I see that so much. I mean, even just down to like the color of the movie, right? Like before she comes to Oz, the commune, it's very dark, right? Like and the second she steps to the commune,
yeah. And apart from
daylight, vibrant colors, yeah.
Apart from a particular couple of scenes in the director's cut, every single scene set at the commune begins with a H, right? I can't remember what it's called. But they're all in bright sunlight. The Horga. Yeah, the Horga.
Oh, that's the people. Yeah, yeah. And also, there's like character parallels as well. Obviously, Dorothy with Danny, and then there's also the Tin Man, Cowardly Lion, and the Scarecrow. So yeah, as we go and talk about the characters, we can kind of make that comparison. But it's kind of interesting to think about up front.
People love that with the Wizard of Oz, don't they? Seems like a very sort of modern thing to do is turn it into a bit of a horror film, like Pearl.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah,
it's been through a lot of interpretations over the years. There's people that listen to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon while they watch Wizard of Oz, and bizarrely, whether it was intended or not, it kind of aligns with the plot points and has similar runtime.
And there's the darkness that they talk about with it being the snow is asbestos, and there's always that rumor of the Wizard of Oz where there was someone hanging in the background. So it's got all of this darkness to it.
Yeah. And also the horrible treatment of whatever her name is.
Judy Garland.
Yeah,
Judy Garland.
Who plays
messed up
Dorothy.
her life.
Yeah, basically.
Just one more thing I want to say was the composer for the score.
Yep.
So as I said, Aster was writing this going through a breakup, and apparently he was listening to this British electronic musician called Bobby Krillick. Okay, he goes by the name The Hacks on Cloak. Okay, specifically listening to a 2013 album called Excavation. and it just really connected with him while he was writing. And then he wrote to this guy, "Can you score my film?" And the guy said yes. So I listened to this score while I was driving. And like, if I was going to give it a genre, I would call it Doom Electronica. Because it is so evil, man.
Have
like,
you penned that? Is that yours?
Trademark.
Yeah.
Trademark, yeah.
Get it on a dictionary now with citation this podcast.
Like I was just driving home listening to it, and it made me feel so evil. I was like looking for cars to hit and stuff. It's
that's just being back in Birmingham.
Well, yeah. It would be amazing music to do LSD to. It's great background music.
I don't know, man. You don't want darkness in your LSD.
That's a bit.
It's quite. I don't know. Like, because it's kind of ambient. But there's just this kind of creeping dread behind it. I'd actually really recommend it. It's good for working to as well because it's not too like disruptive to your brain. Not so great for driving if you don't want to commit road crimes. But yeah, really interesting. Yeah.
I do happen to know that Haxan is witch in German.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because there's a movie from the 1920s called Haxan, one of the earliest horror movies there are. That's the only reason I know it, but yeah.
Right. Shall we have a look at the plot then? We'll go into the plot. We all have our opinions, but should we start with the opening scene?
Okay.
The opening.
Yeah.
In about, about 15 minutes or so? The opening in the director's cut. I think we should say we're probably going to focus more on the director's cut.
Yeah, well,
that's the one that we've all watched.
Yeah.
And we can compare and contrast as we go through,
absolutely.
Yeah.
It depends what you refer to as the opening, because there's 4 stages of it, right? Because you've got the tapestry or that painting, that diagram of basically the entire plot of the movie that you're not going to realize is the entire plot of the movie when you first watch it, but on rewatch it is.
Yeah, I have just like a few points from that. So to the left, Danny's parents, and they actually look like Danny's parents, are connected by a tube with a skull looming above, symbolizing their death. There's a grieving woman and a partner walking with friends to an idyllic community. To the right of the picture, they're dancing around the maypole, and you can spot Pele.
Oh,
the Swedish
Pele,
friend. Like a likeness of Pele spying on, the pictorial representation of Danny in that. And there's also you can also see the cliff diving as well in that.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because although it goes from dark to light in terms of coloration, which would imply things are getting better, there's no change to the horrifying images that you're seeing, which is even if it's not describing the plot, it's describing the tone of the movie, basically. Like same deal. And then from there, you get some lovely shots of the wilderness, right, and snowy forests and stuff. And then that's cut by
a phone ring, like a really jarring phone ring. Yeah. It's like that's kind of like a theme of like nature versus city, right? Like with the classic like American tourist going to a foreign country, experiencing a different culture.
Yeah, it's inserting that tonal shift, basically.
And you've also got the idea that this sort of happens in the winter time, so December, January, it's snowing, which could suggest, well, within the commune, winter is kind of the end, right? Is winter not the end of life? So
that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So perhaps it suggests something along those lines, that it's sort of bringing in that the parents are going to die, that area. Yeah. There's a sort of death even within that piece at the beginning. There's something of an ending, which was within the culture of the 4 seasons of life. There's something in that, perhaps.
Yeah, and it's the darkest point in the movie, I think, and it gets brighter and brighter from there.
Yeah,
basically.
because that's true actually, because everything else is bright, and even when what's his name, Josh, even when Josh runs out to go into and look at the
sneaky
book,
boy with his
it's
camera.
still half light. It's like dawn, but obviously that is in the middle of the night. So you're right. It's the darkest moment, perhaps. Well, both tonally and literally,
in every way of looking at it, really. Yeah. And then I think the first phone call she gets is from the boyfriend.
Yeah, right? she phones. Yeah, she's trying to.
She phones Christian.
Yeah, she's trying to get. She sent a couple of emails to her sister. I think Terry.
Yeah, and I noticed, I paused it, and the message feed on the screen is all within an hour. So everything that's happened, it's happened within that last hour. So there's not that panic set in on Danny quite yet in this moment. But when Christian is on the phone, it's kind of like he's gone out with his friends in that time and already knows about it. So when they're on the phone to each other, he's always like, oh, she's just doing the same thing as earlier. But had an hour before, he was saying, oh, this does sound different, but then still went out with his friends.
Yeah. It's the first like little lick and taste of how much of an asshole this man is, basically.
Oh, so you're not a Christian fan then, Mike?
No. I mean, the director's cut makes it even worse, but even in the theatrical cut, this guy is an asshole.
I mean, the director's cut is almost comically evil.
It changes from dating an asshole to dating like an abusive partner.
Abusive,
doesn't it?
gaslighting.
Yeah, that scene. I mean, we're skipping ahead a bit, but that director's cut scene where they're arguing outside.
In the dark.
And he's guilting her about like giving him flowers. Jesus Christ, man, how small and horrible are you? Like,
Did you know? The whole like opening sequence when they reveal the sister's death.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of the entire movie.
It's so harrowing.
Incredible.
Like the discordant violin and everything.
No, when the violin comes in, it's just
it's horrible. It's really hard to watch, and like it's just horrific.
They're piping a little bit of her screams as well. Like Danny screams. Part of it.
Did you have to say pipe in?
Pipe. They exhaust pipe in a bit of her screams.
No pun intended.
But did you know when we first see the parents in the bed, actually before it reveals that they're dead, when it just cuts to them, if you look on the bedside table, there's a frame photo of Danny, and there's a like a floral headdress like on the painting, on the picture,
it's like a bit of weird
like kind of like foreshadowing.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, have taken that to suggest actually that the cult were in some way connected to her parents' death. To get her into the position.
I wouldn't believe that. Or
no.
Well, about that. But that is the kind of thing that Ari Aster actually wants, because in his interviews he basically says like, "I want you to interpret this in whichever way you want. I have an idea." It's the David Lynchian thing, right?
Yeah.
I have an idea of exactly what this means to me, but you're the viewer and
open to interpretation.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to view it through a different lens or have a different, like he views it sort of as a comedy, in fact.
Oh but he's fucked up, man. Like, but I mean, he actually commented on this specifically when fans were asking him about it, and he was, I think, like quite cagey about giving like a concrete answer, but without like confirming it exactly, because as you said, he doesn't, he wants people to have their own opinion. He does, like, his intention was supposedly, to show that the events of the film were bound to happen in some way, even if the cult weren't doing it directly. Just that it was bound to happen. And it's kind of interesting because that like that kind of theme of fate and lack of control like comes right from Hereditary, right? Like basically none of the actual alive characters in Hereditary, or at least the family, have any control, right? Like the most important character in that film is the grandmother. She's dead.
Yeah.
She's
it's definitely fated from the start.
Yeah,
I mean, like it's a breakup movie, but it's also basically just one girl's travels from lack of a support system to a support system in the form of the cult, right?
In a way, I would say that actually Danny ends up in a position where she is making the choices. She actually gains control in the end of
She gains
something.
the illusion of control because she's part of the cult now, and she's not the leader of the cult.
Yeah.
But what control did she have before in
maybe there is no
life?
Control.
She had no control over her parents' death, her sister, or Christian and what he was like.
But that's a life lesson in itself. Nobody would have control over those things, and they shouldn't. Yeah. But it's whether she can deal with that fact or not. I guess.
There's something else in that opening bit which is interesting to me, is Danny's dependence on drugs or something. It brings that in with her anxiety medicine.
Oh
yeah.
Ativan, if I'm saying that right, and which is used to treat stress.
Yeah, I
anxiety.
googled it like we all did when we saw it.
Yeah, of course.
She suffers from panic attacks, right?
Yeah. But there's this already dependence on drugs, which only becomes more prominent.
Yeah, but you're quite phrasing that in a negative light, right? Like if she has anxiety, it's okay for her to take the medication, and if anything, her moving away from the medication and going to the cult for her.
But it positions her in a better place to be recruited by the cult, right? Like,
correct.
I hope that we'll talk a lot about Pele and his role in all of this, but like he did a real good job, right? Finding these people.
To bring them. It's basically grooming, isn't it?
And they're almost like, as soon as they get there, they're offered drugs. And then for the May Queen bit, they're offered drugs. There's always, and she's taking sleeping pills. She's becomes more dependent on that. And I'm not necessarily saying drugs are all bad. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying there is a dependence of Danny in this film of taking different kind of drugs and finding something out.
There's also, once she gets there, an element of lack of consent for the drugs that she's taking, right? Like, she's guilted into the first drug that she has to take purely because the boyfriend's an asshole, and so
it just doesn't say anything.
So well, he knows the situation's going to play out with her taking the drugs.
Yeah,
so
he doesn't need to say anything.
Fake his way into like, no.
He's like, no, I'll wait, I'll wait. And Mark's like, really?
Reason number 52 why he's an asshole. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, like, I know he's not sympathetic. Like,
you reckon?
No, but
do you see some of yourself in Christian?
a little bit. No. But I mean,
he's also a moron as well. Like when he tries to rob the idea from his mate, Chidi from Good Place. He's just like a small lost man that's just like a bad person. I feel like there's almost nothing redeeming about him.
Yeah, he's the
even when
he's hardly redeemable. There's nothing within his character. There's nothing in that whole film.
Or at least we don't get to see anything redeeming about him.
No, but there's almost nothing real about him. That I never see him as a real person. He's always like trying to come across as normal, but is actually just not a good person.
Well, he's the cowardly lion, right? He's got no convictions in anything. Like, he's just...
He does, but who actually is he? Like, that's what I mean. Who actually is he?
Well, he could also be the Scarecrow, right? Because he clearly doesn't have the aptitude for the course that he's doing at his university. He has to steal the idea from...
Well, I think that Mark is a better fit for that. Like, he's an idiot, right? He's a sex tourist. I'm not even sure if he's a grad student. I think he's just a friend. Like...
Yeah, Mark is...
He's also an asshole.
Yeah.
That's very clear.
Oh, no, he's funny.
But he's a different kind of asshole.
He's a more normal type of asshole.
He's more like your disrespectful British tourist that goes to somewhere and doesn't respect its customs. Like, that kind of guy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And he doesn't really listen throughout the movie. He's vaping during, like...
It cracks me up.
He's vaping or he's... And he has no conviction with that woman. Like, he keeps going, oh, did she look at me? Did she look at me? And he never actually... goes up to her and goes, oh, do you want to go out or something? He doesn't do anything. He's a coward as well.
Yeah, and it's all he cares about, right? Because at the end of the scene when he's pissed on the tree, he still doesn't apologize. He didn't do anything.
No, and he immediately doesn't give a shit about the guy crying his eyes out.
Yeah,
he doesn't feel
only
bad
cares about the girl.
Yeah. So back to the first scene. What are you saying about Christian?
Oh, just he's definitely less sympathetic in the director's cut, I think.
For sure, it's a little
because
bit more
there's
ambiguous.
so much more evidence. Like like that scene after the water ritual, especially.
Yeah. But it doesn't make the ending okay morally, right? She just basically ends the relationship by having him murdered by the cult, or the cult murders him anyway. And that's like the lesson, right? The abusive relationship isn't solved by that, and that's not a good way of de-escalating this, because they were codependent on each other and had no real way of telling each other that this relationship isn't working.
Well, like, I mean, if we're going to talk about the ending real quick, then the movie itself is grooming the audience, right? That you're in a way supposed to cheer. Like, I mean, if you have like no media literacy whatsoever, you cheer for the ending, right?
More so in the director's cut when he's a clear.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about the opening, Joe?
Yeah, just kind of, she knows even then that Christian is gearing up, picking up the courage, whatever, to break up with her. But it all gets so muddied in the water when her family dies.
Well, this is where I have a tiny bit of sympathy for him, because
I guess that's the only way. I would say there's sympathy in that, because he's now staying with her because she needs at least someone in that moment, and he is literally the only person she has in life, other than I think a friend Amy or something.
She seems to have a friend that she's that wants her to break up with him, and his friends want them to break up as well. It's interesting, right? Both of them are kind of too cowardly.
From my viewpoint, your rose tinted glasses seeing what he's doing. He thinks it's more work, basically. I would think, now that her parents have died, and he's worried about the way he'll be looked if he does leave her at that
Well,
point.
yeah.
It's not. I don't think he's thinking about her, or at least in my mind, he's not thinking about her.
But do you think 100%? I mean, there is obvious like, oh, I can't leave
Well,
her now.
I think
bloody hell.
Other than that, if you want to interpret it that way, we see no evidence throughout the entire rest of the movie that he thinks about anyone other than himself.
That's true. I'm willing to give him just this little smidge, something, just anything to make him more
something to
human.
make him, not the worst person in the world.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that, and then 12 minutes in, she's crying in his arms, and her cry, just say Florence Pugh's cry,
The wailing.
it's like that ugly cry. It's that, it's that thing that you don't hear very often. Only in the most harrowing of circumstances does someone cry like that.
Yeah,
and the way she's able to get that guttural sort of earthly sort of sound and is quite incredible. It's a bit like what Mia Goth can do as well in that sense. They can both do this ugliness cry
and if there's anything that justifies it, it's the death of both parents and your sister, right?
Exactly. And basically the sister murdering the. That's how I interpret it. Do you interpret it like that?
I think it's
they're not involved in it because the pipes are on the outside of the door.
Yeah, I think there was something.
It's a murder-suicide.
Murder-suicide.
Some kind of dialogue that implied that she was having problems with or arguments with the parents again before she did what she did.
Yeah, had a bipolar episode and just killed him and killed herself. Yeah, and then that was how I took it.
Yeah, okay, and basically within this in the actual film, this is all taking place within basically an hour. So this is all so raw and fresh to everyone involved in it. And then they're 12 minutes in, cut to the intro, Midsommar.
A24 production, etc. We're back to the snow again.
Yeah. And then how many months later? 4 months. So we're looking at the beginning.
Several months. Yeah, like springtime.
Beginning of life type deal.
Yeah.
Maybe April, May ish. Yeah.
Okay, so several months later, Christian and his friends Mark and Josh have been invited by their Swedish friend Pelle to attend a 9-day midsummer festival at his ancestral commune, the Haga, in a rural Hälsingland region of Sweden. The festival occurs only once every 90 years. Josh, who is writing his thesis on European midsummer festivities, regards it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Christian, who had intended to break up with Danny, who is still grieving for her family, reluctantly invites her after an argument.
Yeah, this whole scene is awkward as fuck.
Oh god, it's horrible. Yeah.
It's framed so well though. You're talking about the scene, right, where they're all on the sofa and she's reflected in the mirror behind. And they're all so non-responsive with what she's saying, and they slowly leave one by one. Yeah,
but that just the way
Josh is such a.
He doesn't say anything.
Bastard.
He just gets up and just walks away. He doesn't acknowledge it.
Well, Pelle tries to bring him into the conversation, right?
And he doesn't say
anything.
And he's just like, nah, mate, nah.
But it's an interesting moment because it's that small talk thing where you're someone leaves the room and you're with an acquaintance and not a friend, and it's like, oh god, here we go. How am I gonna? And then you talk about the most basic of things. And then Pelle suddenly gets a light bulb moment. That's how I saw it. He's sort of like a switch or something. He goes, "Oh,
I'm so glad you're coming."
Exactly.
Yeah, I think his plans changed right there and then, right?
He's like, "Oh."
You don't think he thought that was a possibility that he could get going?
I think
the whole way through.
No, because he's involved in the whole breaking up with her, and he's one of the guys. He's the one who says about. Not impregnated, or Swedish girls. He says something along. I think he said
which is more foreshadowing for what Christian's role is in the movie.
But he mentions that before, so I would say Pelle probably.
But I think there's an element of, because there's not just Pelle, there's the other Swedish guy that.
Ingemar. I'm looking forward to talking about Ingemar.
Yeah, and he's also kind of covetous and weird about the female friend that he's brought along. So I think there's an element
they're
he wanted her to come along, but
they're
it's
intended
his
to be
girl
contrasted characters, right? And I think their ultimate fates represent the contrast in those two characters. They're really interesting. I guess when they get to the commune, we can talk about Ingmar a bit, but I have some stuff to say.
They're just saying the first lines by Pelle are there. Don't forget about all the Swedish women you could impregnate.
Yeah,
in June.
Literally his first.
And that's his first line in the film, and it's to Christian.
Oh, to Christian. It's
to Christian, directed to Christian.
Yeah, it's when they're talking about their relationship, right?
Yeah. So he is at that point, not thinking Danny and Christian are done. I think that before everything comes to
Or he
light.
just knows his weak asshole friend Christian.
Yeah, with
just
no,
going to do it
like,
regardless.
yeah.
Doesn't
Well,
matter.
yeah.
So maybe we can talk about like Mark and Josh real quick. Just what are your thoughts on them?
They're both terrible, but in different ways, I guess. I mean, Josh is less terrible. He's just one-track minded about his work, right? He wants to discover all he can about the Midsummer Festival to the detriment of everything else.
All business. What I love is just like how much he bristles every single time they mention the trip, because he's clearly unhappy even before Danny's invited that his other friends are going. I think.
Yeah, I think he wants a full experience for himself, right? Yeah.
I would potentially say that Josh is worse than Mark.
You think?
Definitely, yeah.
Because
for sure,
Josh has more sense. Like he is more.
He knows what he's
refined.
doing.
Yeah. And there's a scene where he knows what I can't think of what the word is about the suicide. That's stupid. Yeah. So he knows what that is and decides not to tell anyone. And I think.
And he loves it. That smirk on his face.
Yeah, exactly. He looks like, oh, here I know something you don't. But it's like, no, you're not telling your friends that they're going to be so shocked, and it's so obvious.
Yeah, but he doesn't even think they should be there, so he probably wants them to see that and leave.
But isn't
that is a dick move? Obviously, yeah.
Isn't that worse than Mark, who is just
he's tagging
a product of what the world is, and some guys are like that? Isn't that less of a crime than actually having the knowledge and then choosing to still be an absolute arsehole?
I guess. I mean, if we talk about the way they behave in the community, Mark and Josh are both offensive. If we were to paint this as like an okay place to be, that wasn't going to mistreat them, they're both disrespectful and offensive. But Mark is way more disrespectful and offensive. He shouldn't be there, and he's only going along for the wrong reasons, and doesn't care if people are offended. Whereas Josh, I think, would if he'd pissed on the tree if he'd not known.
Do you reckon, though, that if they hadn't have been such obnoxious people, that their fate was sealed like that? Or do you reckon there is actually a chance
Good question.
that they would survive?
Okay, so here's a question for you related to that. Are the Horga white supremacists? And there's a lot of clues that they are. A lot of clues, including
there's the book about Nazi symbolism that Josh has in the card.
He's like, Pele's like, he says it to annoy me because it's like the root of the language. Apparently, there was a scene that was cut that made it more explicit.
But it's hard to take something that's cut. And was it cut for the reason they actually didn't want to go down that road?
Yeah. I mean,
but they're very white. I mean, they bring people in to breed. They admit that, and everybody is white. Like that's definitely a choice.
But Sweden.
But it happens every 90 years.
I don't think.
I also don't think that's true.
Okay. Yeah, I would probably say the same, because there are a few lines within it that would say otherwise. When they say Pele's got astounding taste as always.
Yeah.
Things like this, like it happens actually, like it's not the first time he's done this to a group of people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a 9-day ceremony, 9 sacrifices, but apparently 90 years apart. I'm just not sure. Like, well, because Pele says that his parents burnt, right, when he's trying to like cozy up to Danny and sympathize with her parents dying. He says he saw his parents burnt. And that can mean two things. It could mean his parents were actually victims and he was indoctrinated. Or more likely, he grew up and his parents were part of the...
Maybe they sacrificed themselves. Yeah, that's
but if it was happening every 90 years, that wouldn't happen.
True.
Unless
he's much older than he looks.
He's a time traveler.
Yeah.
The Doctor.
No.
It didn't take you long.
I've got to go one episode without Doctor Who references.
You said time travel. That's where my mind went.
That's all it needs.
Yes.
You couldn't bring up, like any other movie with time travel. I don't know. Primer. That's
Back to the Future.
Good. The most like cerebral time travel movie you could think of.
Well, yes.
That's
what comes to mind.
but anyway, like relating to like the white supremacy thing and whether their fates were sealed, I think yes, their fates were sealed. Christian was pre-approved for breeding, right?
But not marriage.
But definitely not for marriage. And like that just speaks to the insidiousness of Pele too, right? Like that he's communicating with them and showing them pictures of Christian months and months in advance.
But perhaps if Christian was a nicer guy, they might have gone, "Oh, you can marry her instead."
it's possible.
Maybe he would have
It's
survived.
possible.
I mean,
It's
it is
possible.
kind of interesting actually, because if Danny wasn't the Khan, it's just awful people, right? So maybe it is just bringing in horrible outsiders that
Yeah,
do
exactly,
deserve to die,
exactly.
perhaps.
I
Yeah.
think so.
There is a bit
I
of
think
like
so.
a thing where a few times I wanted to write down, well, you actually deserve that. Well, I'm not sure they do, but like
Yeah.
That's
within
the movie
horror,
brainwashing
within
you.
horror,
Yeah.
maybe you're like,
maybe the fact that Danny she is made the May Queen and isn't murdered is the fact that she wasn't actually intended to come.
Yeah, but they
she
flipped. They
passed the
they
test.
saw, and they probably heard from Pele as well, right? Because he can talk to them in Swedish, and they have no idea. I think that they changed their plans.
and she is somewhat damaged and will
Exactly, she's
this point,
perfectly
she's-
vulnerable.
she's very-
perfectly
yeah.
vulnerable, and Pele like wants to be her king. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I think
yeah.
it was pragmatic.
yeah,
actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
I personally think that everybody else was brought there to die. And I also do believe the white supremacy thing, which is interesting because of Ingmar bringing Connie and Simon, who are both not white, knowing, right, okay, we're jumping ahead, but since we're talking about it, like he knows that he's bringing people to sacrifice, right, and he knows that they're not suitable for breeding, so he knows that he's bringing them to kill them, right, so it's kind of like malicious in a way, right, like revenge on Connie for like friend zoning him.
Yeah. I'd argue. I'd argue it was that, definitely, but I'm not sure that it's got racial angles.
So with
I would say yes, they are all white, but we already know that they're like a community that inbreeds and keeps to themselves. So if they are all white, they're probably going to stay
with
that way.
what's his name? The friend, sorry.
Which one? Mark?
No.
Josh?
The
Pele?
Pele's friend,
Ingmar.
Ingmar. When Ingmar brings back
Connie and
Simon
yeah.
and Connie, he sort of suggests that they were dating, and she shuts that right down and said
He's
we
like,
went
no,
on once, and
I
it
didn't even
really
know it was a
happen.
date. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas for him, it's almost as if he brought them back on a personal vendetta. I almost look at it like he really liked her, and she chose someone else. So fuck them.
Yeah.
And because we need sacrifices.
Well, yeah, he knows why they're being brought there. So
Yeah, but it's like almost personal to him. Like it's not just him bringing people who are potentially right for that, or
maybe
about
it was-
their
That's
skin color.
that's the interesting thing, though. Like again, through the
Almost jealousy.
assuming again the white supremacy thing, which I do buy into, which is why he's like a good parallel character to Pele, because Pele gets crowned at the end, he's celebrated, and Ingmar dies. And
By choice, though.
yes, but possibly not. You know, I mean, did Pele know that he wouldn't be sacrificed?
I think it said the word volunteer or volunteers, right?
There is the volunteer.
The way that they phrase it is that if you bring people, you basically, as for quote unquote fairness, you volunteer yourself by choosing to bring people. But Pele doesn't get sacrificed, and Pele is exalted for bringing
the May
Christian
Queen.
and bringing a May Queen. So that's two people he's recruited.
And perhaps.
And Ingmar failed. He didn't even bring anybody white. And I was like,
He
screw
lost,
this guy.
lost
Kill
the
this guy.
competition. Yeah.
yeah, I mean.
And this thing about volunteer, like I don't trust what they say. Like okay, again, cutting to the end. Like they give Ingmar and the other guy Ulf, who gets burnt alive, who volunteers, this thing that's supposed to numb their pain when the barn's burning, and they're screaming in pain. They just lie all the time to the
no,
people.
I'm not.
But they still volunteer. That doesn't stop them volunteering. They were just
but
tricked into
but this like
a version
I
of what's going to
disagree
happen
with
that
your
isn't true.
assessment of that they give them that and they know it doesn't cause pain because none of them have actually been through it. I reckon because they say earlier on, Josh mentions, well, how do you make money here? What do you do? And there's this sense of they say about homeopathy and things that actually in medical science don't work.
Yeah, but they also have people going off and becoming actual doctors, and then they finish the summer of their lives. They come back. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, but I think whether it works or not, burning to death is still going to be painful, right? It can be the strongest painkiller you want if you're still conscious. And you're still going to feel
I think
that
it's
pain,
less
right?
of them.
It's the destruction of your body.
Yeah,
So-
it's less of them potentially like going, ha ha, we're going to give you that. I see it less devious, less
Well, no, it's not. It's not like comic book villainy, but like you're kind of like implying that the cult is altruistic by nature to its own people, when that's just not how cults work. Like, of course, it's insidious and self like persisting, and they'll say anything to get what they want, right? Like,
Yeah, but in this case, why would what they want be for them to suffer and
no, they don't
die
want them.
in
They
agony?
don't.
And they
want,
do actually care for them within the cult, right? They
Yeah.
care about each other when you're in it, when you're family. They actually do care about you, and they all feel the pain.
Yeah, that's
together.
the purpose of the cult, right? To make everybody feel like they belong and they're happy.
So why make them feel pain at all? Like, surely they have
Because it's a
ability.
sacrifice to the gods.
Yeah, but then
Yeah,
why
it's-
goes?
it's
then,
tied
yeah,
up
but
in
then,
religion,
But like
right?
they
When
don't
it's
have
tied
to
up in
do. They don't
religion.
have to give them anything for the pain. Like they don't have to. Like the people.
Well, then
volunteer.
maybe it's a placebo just to help
That's
them
what I was thinking. It's a placebo. And
placate them.
it's
Yeah.
perhaps actually, if we look at it from a Western point of view, we kind of go, oh, well, what they're doing is bullshit. And a lot of people say that about homeopathy treatments as well. So there's this almost illusion, and obviously cult, there is an illusion within it, and there's this sort of intertwined sort of illusion-y type of, oh, if you do this, we'll get good crops. And
Yeah, I mean, trying to look for distinct, understandable to rational people logic in things where they're burning people for their crops is a fallacy, I would say. Like, they're just following tradition. And maybe if 500
Yeah, but
years ago,
those traditions don't
if 500 years ago
materialise.
that's
No.
what they gave them
Yeah.
for pain, then maybe they'll continue doing that forever.
Maybe.
Whether it works
but,
or not. It's tradition.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's just something I thought.
it's interesting.
Yeah,
No, it's
yeah.
interesting.
No,
I
it's
think
all valid. Yeah.
everything is valid.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if I believe something, you believe something different. That's the beauty of this film, actually.
Yeah.
That's what Ari Aster wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incidentally, the transition. So after she has that talk to the friends in that room, and they one by one leave. Pele's left there, right? Nothing but eye contact from him, right? And attention and care. And then he talks about his family. Then I think, and that gives her a panic attack, and she has to like leave and go to the bathroom. And then it cuts to the airplane bathroom. It's really cool, right?
It's a good-
It's
it's
a
a good-
really cool
yeah.
transition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something with that, when you're on that airplane thing, throughout the film, Danny, apart from the start and the end, she really has to hold in her emotions. There's a lot of
Yeah.
like her trying to
Repress it.
keep some
get
control.
isolated.
Well, it's
Yeah.
because her boyfriend makes her feel hysterical whenever she lets
Yeah.
out any emotions,
And
right?
she also
she
feels-
ends up having to apologize for them. So.
Well, yeah, and she feels very alone, I think, as well in that.
Well,
So,
that's an interesting thing because she's always crying alone
yeah,
until the very end. Well, when she's
Sort of,
basically indoctrinated, and then she experiences that like community and
Yeah,
everyone
share
sharing.
their
they
emotion.
share all of
Yeah,
the
they-
pain and the
yeah,
woe
yeah,
together.
yeah.
She can finally express, and it's within their society, within how they live, that you can do that. Whereas in, say, in a Western society like ours, you are sort of taught to suppress those emotions to that extent. Like, there's no way you go around wailing on the street and think people are just going to look at you, think you're weird, move on, and like they must be high on meth or something.
They're definitely not going to join in with you.
No, they're not going to join in.
Yeah.
They're probably not going to
I'd join in
care
with you,
for
Joe.
you. Thanks. But it kind of shows that difference in how she actually feels in that moment. That she's got a family now. Like she's lost one and gained another within that.
We don't know the strength of any of the kind of social bonds and communities she had with her before the movie, but it didn't seem like she had a good, even when they were alive, she was basically well and truly prepped for joining the cult, right?
Yeah.
She had an unhappy life and didn't have a community
was
of any kind
caring
around her
for her sister
to help her. Yeah.
and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the perfect candidate. Yeah.
Yeah. Correct.
But I also feel, that the whole group in a way was the perfect candidate group for the sacrifices that they wanted to make. Yeah. Incidentally, just before we move on to the next bit, like the shot when they're driving the car towards the commune,
Yeah.
and it does that like cool inverted, thing when the camera flips
Yeah,
upside down, and the
yeah,
roads, the road ends up on the top of the.
Yeah, it goes
screen.
from The Shining to Inception. Basically.
Yeah. I always think of that as like a going to hell shot.
Yeah, and it's sort of it's also the last time there's any outside communication for the rest of the film when Danny's friend texts her saying, I hope you're okay and whatever
Yeah,
the text says. But it's kind of the last moment of being in the real world, and it's like then they go into Oz.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's inventive cinematography all the way through. Even the most, now that you've mentioned it, I'm just going to quickly slip it in
Go
there.
for it.
But like, it's a pedestrian kind of situation where Danny and Christian are in the back seat of the car, and the camera's in front of the windscreen, and it tilts this way and that way, constantly seeing Josh and Mark in the front seats, and like it's just a simple scene filmed in such a brilliant way, basically, because you get the views of the two people. You understand that they're like an obstacle in this conversation, and you also get the fact that you only see one of them at each time because they're not really listening to each other. They're not on the same wavelength. When one's talking, the other one is invisible. Yeah,
that's really interesting. There's no cuts then in that. It just goes from one to the other. Is it?
Yeah, it just sways from. I like more than the because obviously there's great shots in this movie that are full of things, and they're beautiful, and they're staged so well. But I just personally love it when there's like a simple scene just done in an inventive way, like something that you see in every movie, people talking in a car, but it's done in such an interesting way, bringing the flair of the director. Yeah.
And before we move on to after the car bit, I think it sets another one of Christian's very terrible traits. When he doesn't tell...
I do have
you've got a record of things.
Extensive list.
We'll go through it a bit. I'd love to go through that. But he does this thing which he continues to do to everyone in his life, and that's not tell them until it's going to really affect them. So he doesn't tell Danny that he is going to Sweden.
Yeah, until basically confronted.
And then, until he has to. And he, again...
But then even then he says she's not coming. I've told you.
He diminishes it both sides.
Yeah, and then he does it to his friends.
Yeah. He's such a worm.
And it's such an awkward thing. It's like, oh, it's a lad's holiday, and oh my god, here comes my girlfriend, like sort of thing as well within.
But every single person on the trip wants something different out of the trip. Obviously, Pele wants something different from the trip. But you got Mark wanting his lads holiday, sex and so on. Josh wanting it to be purely about the work and the Midsommar Festival. Christian, I don't even know why.
Probably just because everybody else is going.
It's because everybody else is going. I think originally it was probably to get away from Danny before she came.
Possibly, yeah.
And then Danny's just coming because she's got no support system there, so at least she can have the terrible support system of Christian by going.
I was going to say this is probably where Mark is loudest. So if you're on your first watch, you would almost think that they are just going to Sweden to get some like Swedish babes or something like that.
Yeah, because that's certainly what it sounds like.
He's like, are we going to Stockholm? I want to see the women in Stockholm. Yeah.
He actually asks, are there any good sex clubs in Stockholm? This man.
So
I love Mark.
It's interesting that kind of on the first watch, and then you watch it again and you see all the nuances after that. But the first time round, you sort of go, oh, this is just 4 guys and Danny is getting in the way. Like she is almost, you can frame it in a certain way where she is the, oh God, do you not take the hint? Don't go. It's a lad's holiday.
There's a lot of that, like burying the lead, where at least on the first watch you're distracted by something while something else is more important happening in the background. It even happens in the very opening scene where it begins, once we first meet Danny, we're looking at a computer screen and we're seeing the messages. So it immediately introduces her, like, and her sister. But then she calls Christian, and that phone call is so toxic that suddenly takes all of the audience's attention. And then she phones her friends afterwards to talk about Christian, and then suddenly the sister is forgotten. You're only really thinking then about Danny and Christian, because that's really what you've been kind of confronted with for the last few minutes. And then it's the phone call from the unknown number. Then it cuts to her wailing, and you're like, oh yeah, this was the thing.
But that bit there plays out almost in real time, doesn't it? Yeah, where there's actually not just one focus, like there sometimes is in a movie. It's like all over the place, just life is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, though, I'd say that the focus of the movie is their relationship. So we're being told the story of their relationship, and we never get to meet the sister or the parents, for example. They're ancillary kind of characters that
contribute
exactly to Danny and
exactly
to the relationship.
that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like all of the horror elements, like what her sister did is a horror element, right?
Yeah.
It's all in the background, and it hits you sometimes at the forefront, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm watching a horror movie, but it's all through the lens of this relationship, and by extension, especially in the director's cut, the relationship amongst all the friends, right? Like they all kind of have issues with each other.
Yeah.
I just think that's really interesting.
Well, apart from Mark and Christian, who just seem like big buds, but
I guess they're okay.
But other than that, there's fiction everywhere.
Yeah. And then Christian also does like A-grade gaslighting within these opening scenes with Danny, where it's like, and then leads to her actually going, "Oh, I just got confused. I'm sorry. You know, you're valid to be angry if your boyfriend hasn't said that they're going on holiday in 2 weeks," and he turns it on its head. It's impressive how terrible,
it is,
like how awful that he is and how he can gaslight it. So,
but she minimizes herself so much as well, though. Like, I wonder if that's like because of.
But he knows he can do it.
That's an element of the codependence, right? We know that this argument is one of 100, and we're only seeing the 100th one, right?
Yeah,
that is their dynamic. It's an unhealthy dynamic between both of them. Not just because Christian is a piece of shit, but because Danny isn't realizing that he's such a piece of shit and he's going along with the play and every single time following the script. Yeah.
So I love this this scene on the hill where they do magic mushrooms and they meet Ingmar, Connie, and Simon. Like Mark just cracks me up. I just find him so funny.
Yeah. When I don't want new people right now.
Yeah.
New people are good, Mark.
Yeah. He's like, no.
It's almost like Mark is acting bad at this point, if you see what I mean. Like his actual acting is wooden as anything, but it's actually him being high and spaced out.
Exactly, yeah.
But if it's like this, it reminds me, the way it's delivered is a bit like, they're eating her and then they're going to eat me. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
And he's like, whoa, lie down.
Yeah. But I love that he like lies down and then he checks that people are lying down. He's like, lie down with me, Josh, come on. So bossy.
I honestly think he's a bit like an in-betweeners character, just plonked on his little lad's holiday. Yeah.
Oh, and he's like freaking out about. He's like, "What time is it?"
Yeah,
it's like 9 o'clock. He's like,
"Shouldn't be this light.
It's too light." Yeah, that can't be right. Yeah. The drug taking effects are really good. As well.
Especially towards the end of the movie, but definitely.
All the way through.
You got the trees moving, but like it's not to the extent of later on in the movie, right? Where
like
everything on the screen is moving.
Yeah. But it's like it apparently took him about 60 attempts to get it right. Aster wasn't happy with it. There's not a lot of kind of special effects in the movie. But like the drug taking scenes were special effects, and he just wanted to find that perfect balance between it not being too minimal, but also not being too much, right? Like, and I think it's really effective kind of representation of tripping.
Yeah, because oftentimes it's quite over dramatized, right? And an entire different world and this kind of thing, which can happen if you take enough, I guess. But most of the time, it's like reality plus, right? And it is a lot like things moving when they shouldn't be moving, things being understood in different ways when they shouldn't be.
It's interesting to me that Danny almost seems peaceful. It doesn't seem to me like she is having a bad trip until Mark says about, "You are my actual family, you are my actual family." And then she suddenly goes boom and something happens. But it's almost like she sees herself becoming one with the ground, like the grass starts growing out of her hand.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, actually there's something in this. This isn't bad. I quite like being one with nature. And then the family thing comes up and she immediately goes, "Oh shit, all my issues."
All it takes is a reminder,
And then a panic attack while you're tripping, like the most horrible thing.
The worst.
And her like walking towards the bathroom and she's like, "You're fine, just fuck.
Yeah. And then she hallucinates everybody laughing at her.
Yeah.
Whether they are or not, we don't really know.
And then the bathroom is kind of her only point of being on her own. It's like her only solitude at all now within the movie. She always goes to the bathroom in these moments, like to be on her own. I don't think there's any other time other than at the start. She's kind of alone. She wants to be alone at times.
Especially once she gets to the commune. There's nowhere
to hide. Nowhere to go.
Which is by design, of course, because it's basically the cult is trying to foster an independence with her, right, or anyone else if they're not going to kill them.
Something else that they kind of do when they first get there with the drugs and everything, they wake up the next day and there's no real nighttime. It's as if they really have entered a different dimension or something.
Yeah, well, they're kept to this rigid system by the cult, right, where they take part in all of the activities in the day, and therefore they're on their system. So all of the cult activities, I think there's a lot of sun iconography and stuff on their indoor kind of things. So
And it's
that's what
interesting.
we're presented with.
They go through the archway, the sun, whatever it is, and it's
I thought it was a vagina.
It could well
both.
be. It could be. Yes. It could
Honestly,
be a vagina.
sun
Not sure
maybe
what
makes more sense.
vaginas you've been looking at, but
A sun vagina.
Interesting search history.
depends how you spell in sun. Yeah, we leaving that in.
Oh, come on.
Are you is it recording?
Let's go with it. Yeah.
So anyway,
He's loving it. Yeah.
sun vagina. So anyway, as soon as they pass through the sun's vagina. Okay, so they enter through the sun and
Is that the phrasing we want to go with?
enter through the sun.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I'm locking it down. And
They enter through the sun.
through the sun, and they get introduced to the cult. And Josh, I know, is immediately down to business, right? Like he's asking straight away if he can take photos of everything. I also noticed at this time that because we now introduced to Connie and Simon, that their relationship is there to contrast Danny and Christian, right? Like they're very clearly in love.
Yeah, they
I
talk
don't
about
know,
They've been
how
going
they've
out
been together.
about the same length of time, or like 3.5
We don't get
years,
the
something
level
like
of focus on their relationship that we do with Danny and Christian, though, right?
No,
I don't know whether
it's
we can
it's
weigh
true,
too much
but
into
like
them being happy, but
Oh.
I guess it is a parallel from what we see.
yeah, and
Not a
well,
parallel,
I mean,
an opposite situation.
because I noticed, a little bit later on when they're talking, to them a bit more, and they're introducing themselves and how long they've been in a relationship, and they say that they just got engaged, and Danny's like, "What?" Like she's like, "You're doing that, and why aren't we doing that? Why am I not ready to do that?" You know what I mean? That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, and Christian immediately changes the subject.
Yeah,
There is
yeah.
actually kind of a massive contrast between when Simon allegedly leaves without her and she's visibly distressed and doesn't believe for a
Yeah.
second that he would do that.
Yeah.
Whereas if that happened with Danny and Christian, like
Well, she literally-
She says that, doesn't
she,
she?
Yeah.
stra-
in
she
the-
straight up says, "I would expect that of you," right?
Yeah,
Basically, yeah.
exactly.
So they sit down in that big R shape, isn't it? That's this bit? And they're
The triangles, I suppose.
yeah.
The triangles, yeah.
And I don't know if it's the kids. I think it's the kids, right? That they're playing that game, Skin the Fool,
Skin the Fool, yeah.
which is like a foreshadowing as well.
Yeah, for Mark.
And the teenage girl Maya,
Yeah.
she kicks Christian, and he's like, "Hello."
Yeah, he is actually,
Yeah.
because then he goes, "Oh, can I join in?"
It's the first time that he's proactive, and actually,
Yeah.
and Josh follows him in that
Yeah.
because Josh then goes and
I
joins in.
noticed that as well.
Yeah.
That actually it took her to come across, kick him in the back, and for him to go, "Oh, yeah, I will go and do this." Like he's instantly, I don't know, attracted or something within her character. He is.
I think to a certain extent, he's looking just for an escape from being with Danny and looking for a reason or an excuse to do that.
Yeah, it's an invitation, right, to just not be next to her anymore and just go
Yeah,
do something.
exactly.
Yeah. So this is the thing about Danny's birthday as well. So they arrive on Danny's birthday, and Pele's drawn her a little portrait, right? Is that this bit, or has he done the portrait before? But he's got
No, the portrait's around this time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
when
yeah,
they're at
for her birthday. Yeah, and she's like, don't worry about it. Christians forgot anyway.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering what you thought. Like, why does Pele go and tell Christian that it's her birthday? Why does he intervene in that?
I think he's just trying to sow discord between them because he wants her for himself, and he's already, after talking to the elders or whatever, he knows she's going to join the cult, so he's looking for Because he knows Kristen's going to screw it up, and he does.
That's what I was
he gets
thinking
his
as well.
shitty little like
it's
slice of
terrible,
cake.
that.
It's actually worse than forgetting his like shit effort, right?
Yeah.
So,
But it's actually a really well framed shot. That actually, when he's holding the slice of cake
and he's trying to
with the
light it
singular
with
candle.
Yeah.
And all the while behind them,
the women
is like true.
They're in a group.
True familial connections going on behind
yeah,
them, and like the contrast between them behaving as a family that care for each other, and him with his shitty, terrible cake that's hastily put together. He didn't even make the cake. He just asked probably someone in the community to cut him a slice off. Of
surely, right.
You also notice in that they're cradling the baby, they're together, and maybe Maya in the background there, that she may be the ginger-haired person in that, and she's always kind of framed in his shots a lot of the time. There's a lot of this
in the background.
Looking
at him.
There's a lot of this, the inevitability that she's always just there, even if it's off screen. She's just there, and she's just there.
They do a lot of foreshadowing of the deaths of the main characters. Yeah.
And just to go back to where they first get introduced, I almost saw when they go in there, I think I mentioned it before about it being like Wizard of Oz like, but also it's like the clarity of everything, like it's so crisp and clear. It's like 4K vision. You go to something else and it's not realistic in a way. It lacks.
Yeah.
Well, it's like that Technicolor feel of the Wizard of Oz.
Old school. Right? When it goes into color, it's like everything. The world is just suddenly in color.
It's a heightened reality.
And Danny is.
Yeah, because that's what they're presenting to the visitors, right? We're following the visitors primarily. We don't really get a lot. I don't think we get any scenes without a visitor being present.
No, not really.
We're always attached to their perspective.
Yeah, we're always seeing it through their eyes, and it's and that's what the community is presenting them: this sunny, glorious visage of what they are when they're not that.
Yeah.
And they get a really lovely welcome, like you're all welcome here. And then
look at my skirt.
Making it goofy, like making them endearing to them. Yeah,
and that's where I can't think of his name, but he says Pele has immaculate sense for people.
Yeah,
which also frames it to me as this isn't 90 years every 90 years. Like this happens all the time potentially. That's how I would.
Although the thing is, well, again, this brings into question, this voluntary thing. If he's brought people back before, why isn't he dead?
Because maybe the actual ceremony is only every 90 years, but they have to keep bringing people in because they don't inbreed unless they do it.
You think maybe just for breeding then? The other years, possibly. Maybe,
perhaps they just do it regularly, but in a different way. But this just coincides.
Maybe.
Because they do say earlier, they're back from their trip on the outside. Like their world is their own world. There's nothing else around it, and everything.
I kind of imagined it as sort of like a Rumspringa kind of thing. And whenever a member of the cult gets of a certain age, they travel out in the world to find people to service the cult in whatever way they need to service them.
But it's kind of scary.
And in this particular servicing, it's the 90 years are up and they need to do the burning for the crops, but they still do this for other purposes, whether it's finding people for the cult or it's
but would you say they find other people anyway, because there's quite a lot of young people there and they don't
they're definitely not
they
90
don't
years
inbreed
old.
unless they have to, unless they have the need to replace the oracle.
Well, we have no real understanding of the way that they run their society, right? But I would imagine that this is something that happens quite often.
We see a lot of May Queen pictures.
Yeah,
right? And then definitely they're not 90. They're not 90.
Photo,
there's definitely a May Queen every year.
Yeah.
But we don't necessarily know that is always a guest, right? Because if we're gonna go with this,
that's true.
We're gonna go with the supposition that Danny wasn't supposed to be there, and that's a happy coincidence. Then.
And she's quite oblivious in that scene, quite oblivious to the fact that she's going to become the May Queen. And drugs have taken effect.
Oh, yeah.
She's just dancing. I don't think there's any intent that...
Yeah.
I mean, she, arguably could have been on the chopping block had she not done that. She may have saved her own life.
Yeah, I am curious about that May Queen.
Because we don't really know whether she was always meant to be the May Queen or she just won the competition.
I reckon with everyone else being as high as they were...
Yeah, she could have just fell over.
Honestly,
at any point, right?
yeah, but she also could have fallen over several times. Like because she wasn't speaking Swedish, right? So our entire like perspective on that is skewed.
Yeah,
So
correct.
she could have fallen over several times. They picked her up. She has no idea what's going on. They tell her at the end that she's won. She's feeling great. Like I don't know. Like it's true that it could be either way. Like maybe she loses, maybe she dies, but it also could have been preordained.
Yeah.
I don't know. And again, that's like the genius of
it
it.
strengthens her attachment to the cult, right? If they make her this like,
Yeah, especially when they're like exalting her and focusing on her,
makes
giving
it
her
easier
attention.
to sever off Christian if it seems to be her
It's
decision.
it's in their interest to bring her in, and you know, and an easy way to bring her in is it helps, right, making her May Queen. Anyway, yeah. Before we move on, we talked about it briefly before, but the life is like a seasons of the year thing. Okay, yeah. So spring, I guess you're just a child, right? Until you're 18 in spring, and then summer, 18 to 36, you go out into the world, and I guess
learning,
develop a skill or something that you bring
and just
back.
develop as a human.
Yeah. Take outside cultures, ideas, and things like that, and then bring it back. Then you work until, what do you say, 54?
Mm-hmm.
That's the autumn, and then winter 54 till 72. So I was just thinking about the ages, and I guess the characters, they're like grad students, right? So they're mid to late 20s probably. So they're actually in the midsummer of their lives, right? According to the Hogger, which is cool. And it's interesting. So you were saying, Mike, that they go out and in the summer of their lives, they go out and fulfill a purpose, and it just so happened to be that the purpose this time was to bring someone back.
It might always be the case to bring someone back because
but they don't want people bringing. They don't want everybody going out because Pele's not at the end of his summer.
Well, no, if
right?
they don't find anyone worthwhile bringing back, they won't bring anyone back.
Yeah.
But if that's how they procreate with people outside to keep the gene pool diverse, if they're not breeding an oracle, right, which is the only time that they explicitly say that they inbreed, then they're not going to do that sporadically. They're probably going to do that yearly, if not.
And something else I noticed is
more often than that.
You really only see what the women are doing more so than the men. You don't really see if the women go out and bring people back, but you do see that the women are very nurturing, and they're all like a family. The women are a lot more in the front and center, whereas as the men are much more removed. You see the man bring them in and introduce them and welcome them, and then everything else really is you see women doing it.
But it's almost like the audience is attached to Danny's perspective. And they want her to see what the life is like for women in the village, and so that's what we see.
But what is the power structure? I would assume it's a male-dominated power structure.
The men doing in the movie is the gardening, right?
Yeah.
We see...
Like, the chief is a woman, right? I forgot her name, but Siv, I think it is. The character's name, Siv. Like, she's the one that talks to Christian and explains that he's been selected for breeding. Like, she's the leader of the...
That's true, yeah.
So, I mean, that's pretty appealing, right? To show that women have a lot of power.
If you're presented with a matriarchal society.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, actually, because, when Christian is disposable, and he is just there to sort of give his seed to like the woman in the situation, then she still has worth. His worth is nothing after that. He's not going to be the father. He really has nothing to offer after he's done that.
I always wondered what would happen if Danny didn't pick him at the end, because they're not going to let him live, are they? I guess they just kill him quietly somewhere.
Well, I don't know. Is he permanently paralyzed, or is he just temporarily as well? Yeah. Like, what happened? What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, anyone could be convinced to be as part of the cult when they're under a load of drugs and
I guess
manipulated in such a way. I don't know.
That's a risk. That's a risk, though, right? Keeping him on.
But I think they knew she was going to choose him.
Yeah, probably.
Because
yeah.
Pele knew he was an asshole,
and they saw an angle.
Their relationship was broken.
Yeah.
They saw an angle and went with it.
Yeah.
Really, in a way, they almost put those sort of chess pieces into place and let it run. It's surely
Yeah.
not their first time doing something
Yeah,
like
I
that.
mean, they didn't try too hard to stop her looking at Christian having sex.
Exactly.
online,
When they
like,
said, "Oh, that's
oh
not
no,
for you,"
no, it's almost,
it's like them saying, "Don't press
Well, that was
button."
almost
Yeah,
pretty much
yeah.
an encouragement, right?
yeah. Shall we carry on?
Yeah, I just want to say about the bear.
Oh,
That's interesting, isn't it? When they just go, "Well, why is there a bear?" Well, it's a bear.
it's just a bear. Yeah,
It's just a bear. That's
yeah.
great.
Just move
Yeah.
on from
Okay,
it. Yeah.
cool, whatever.
But then you're wondering throughout the rest of the movie what the hell the bear has got to do with anything.
To be honest, I forgot about the bloody bear.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
And at the end, I was like, "Oh yeah, there was a bear."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Are bears like? Do you get bears in?
No, well that's
Scandinavia?
well, from what I understand, that Ulf, who's the other guy that volunteers himself at the end, who also apparently brought something from the outside in. That was his contribution. That's what I heard. Yeah.
You got a relatively easy job then. Like you just chill around.
I guess.
Buy a bear just before he came back. Yeah.
I don't know if I want
How do they get
to
it
go
back?
to
Put
all
it-
that effort to bring a bear there just to die. Like
They put it in the
screw
back
that.
of a ute, and then there you go, bring it back
Yeah,
into
it's
the
fine.
car.
You can just store that in with your luggage, right, on the plane. Yeah.
Okay, so now we have Atestupa. So the day after their arrival,
Well, almost. What about Austin Powers?
Yeah, exactly.
You missed Austin Powers.
They were watching Austin Powers.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, none of the main cast went to go watch Austin Powers.
So we didn't get to see it.
Didn't get to see what this weird Austin Powers situation was going on.
But
it's an interesting film choice, right?
yeah, but it also shows that in some ways they're pretty normal, and and we get this sort of otherworldly feeling, partly because of the costume choice. And the costume choice within it makes it seem like we're in a completely different era. And then you get these shots of like, oh, there's a pickup truck, oh, there's a car, and then there's a TV, they got power, there's a hydro plant. Like there's all this stuff where it's all very...
I did actually see an interview where Ari Aster was asked why it was Austin Powers, and he said just because he thought it was funny. But then he found out later on that Austin Powers is actually really popular in Sweden.
Oh, really?
For some reason.
No way.
Oh, he didn't
it was
actually know when he
No,
did
he didn't
it.
know that going in, but now he knows, and it makes it even more perfect.
That's
Yeah.
great.
I mean, I like obviously this is not intended in that case, but it's kind of interesting that like the plot of Austin Powers is about a man out of time trying to integrate himself in a different society, and that's what the Hauga are doing, right? Like in the summer phases of their life, they're integrating themselves in the world.
Yeah.
It's pretty tenuous, to be honest, and obviously not intended.
Well,
but
I mean,
interesting.
there's like huge. Well, I wouldn't put a percentage on it, but there's a huge swathe of movies where it's main character in a situation or area that they have to adjust to. That's like character development, I guess.
I suppose,
Yeah.
I suppose.
So this is part of the movie now where Josh has that opportunity to tell them what is about to happen,
Yeah.
and he chooses not to. Like, why do you reckon that is? What is it within his character?
Oh, he loves like
He just wants to
lording the knowledge over them. Yeah.
Feel superior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, but we're going back to like the Wizard of Oz thing. I saw Josh as the Tin Man, so he doesn't have a heart. Like, and so I don't think it occurred to him like he was solely motivated by lording the knowledge over him, and like the actual emotional consequence of him withholding that information. In my opinion, he didn't really consider. Because
he doesn't care about anything about his other than his academia, right? So he doesn't care what the other people think. I don't think he even wants them to be there. He's
he
seeing it as
I don't think
his
he wanted them there at
thesis
all.
visit,
Yeah.
and they're just guests. So
He almost sees himself as like, I've got so much knowledge, they'll love me. Like, I'm great.
Oh, because he's chiming in, isn't he? Like, is this the blah, 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 runic language?
yeah.
They're
he's
like, well,
basically
actually,
like
no, it's
a
the
know-it-all.
and then
his interactions.
And there's another
with
time when he's like, "Oh, that's just like this other."
Yeah, when they first get introduced,
Yeah,
that's
I'm
where he
like,
says
"Oh,
that.
that's a social
And he goes,
phenomenon."
okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and he changes the subject. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like the
Good
little,
on you, mate.
the little kid from Polar Express, like the dreamy one that's going on about trains.
yeah. So yeah, now they get into the R shape. So they're in that.
Oh, that's the R. Yeah.
Now we're at the next day
Yep.
with the
Atestupa.
say that again.
Atestupa.
Isn't it
Atestupa.
Atestupa?
All right, Mark.
Is that not how
No,
it's...
Atestupa, not Atestupa. That's how Christian says it when he's ignorant.
Ignorant.
But yeah, like
we're all probably pronouncing it wrong.
Of course
we're
we
not
are.
Swedish.
Yeah.
So
we should move on.
how dare you?
It's quite emotional, isn't it? Where they, the two of them on the end of the table, when you know what's coming.
Yes, yeah.
You kind of watching them going, oh, fucking hell, they're about to throw themselves off a cliff.
Yeah.
And then you got Mark there who says...
It's just like, what the fuck's going on?
I put down here that he has less and less respect as the movie goes on. He says, what would happen right now if I put my finger in his butt?
Yeah.
And Josh is like...
Yeah, literally. You can hear the slap
Oh, God.
echoing across the field. Well, I love that, like, after that dinner. Well, I love how respectful they are. You know, whoever they're honouring at the meal, they wait for them to act first, right, before they act. And then after that meal's over, like, Mark is something like, are you going with them? Are we supposed to follow them? I'm just gonna go to sleep.
Screw you guys.
I'm just gonna go to sleep. Yeah. and like when it cuts back to him after the ceremony, you can hear with the subtitles on that he's watching on his phone something about some guy that got his dick bitten off. But in a blowjob. Yeah. And he's just like vaping away watching that. It's really funny. But yeah, so what did you think of Atastupa when you first watched it, Joe?
Oh, it's horrific.
Yeah.
Like the where she just throws herself off and goes down like perfect.
Well, at least she goes head first, unlike the other guy.
I've written down here, why leg first?
What a maniac.
Why leg first? Fucking idiot.
I mean, yeah, that is a point because he must have gone to a lot of Atesh Tapaz or however we want to pronounce it in his life.
Maybe he
must know
nervous.
the tactics. Yeah, who knows? He wanted the pain, maybe. Yeah.
Maybe.
God. And I also love the reaction of Danny where she grabs onto Christian's arm and like you see their reaction before you see them jump. So their reaction comes before.
And the sound's muted as well.
Yeah.
And you get it in sort of like a half time.
And even Josh is taken aback by it, which is interesting as well. He's like, fuck, that in
Well, surely, like,
in theory,
like,
it's so
yeah,
cool.
exactly. Like the reality when you're confronted with the reality of it. Yeah. Yeah, and even like through the muted sound, you can hear like Connie and Simon
they're the only
losing
ones
their
that are
fucking
really
minds.
like kicking off about it. Yeah.
But what's interesting, where she immediately dies, obviously.
Yeah.
But with him, when he's still alive, you've got the whole commune like in pain. They're all feeling it as one. It's one of the first times you see that.
That's right.
That, like,
yeah.
emotive response.
Yeah.
Like them all sharing it synonymously.
They're all like together. There's a thread or something. Something connects them all. The ground, the earth connects them all in life and death.
And I like that they have that massive ominous mallet that's bloodstained.
Oh, it's
that
like
bit,
son of Resident Evil.
That big, the big guy holding it goes over there and smacks.
Yeah, but they all do it, don't they? There's like three of them.
Because then next it's a woman, right? So they even share that.
It's actually quite interesting because that's the first bit of actual gore or violence or horror we get in this movie.
Yeah,
and it's
like
probably
insanely
about
shocking.
Halfway through.
Yeah, probably about the midpoint.
They really hold off on the gore and everything, and it makes it 10 times more shocking.
Well, it's a bit like and it's also a head trauma, right? It's a bit like the turning point in Hereditary when that changes. Also, more or less the midpoint, maybe the end of the first act. But again, there's not much happening in that until it happens.
But again, it's because we're following the perspective of Danny and to a certain extent her friends, and that's when they realize this isn't okay. This place that they're in, they want to leave. They're as shocked as we are. And we're on the ride to the same.
What were you saying about Connie and Simon?
Oh, so you can hear them like through the muted sound because we're still attached to kind of Danny's perspective here. You can hear them; they're reacting the most, right? Shouting, screaming, and they're shouting at Ingmar especially. And I was just thinking again about Ingmar because I just got Ingmar on the brain.
Favorite character.
It might be. That because they cause quite a scene in that and a few other things as well in their reaction. And I was just wondering if he was, punished for that at the end by having to be forced.
There could be something in that, because she does say, "Did you not warn them?"
Yeah, like, and she's not happy about that.
But then again, Pele doesn't warn them either.
Yeah, but they don't. They don't make a scene.
To an extent, he must assume.
And
they know. He knows
anthropology.
That Josh must know.
Anthropology students.
And if
good point.
If Christian wasn't such a shit student, he'd know as well. Yeah. I imagine.
And Josh, if he wasn't such an arsehole,
probably doesn't care about Mark that much.
Yeah.
No. Well, Mark wasn't even there.
No.
So,
oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
So it's only Danny, the one that they didn't expect, is presumed to be completely in the dark.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
to me, this is also the moment where their friendship becomes completely disconnected. Like they part ways. And
Christian and Josh.
Christian, Josh, and Mark, they all go separate ways here. They're all something within this happens.
Yeah.
Mark's gone. He's disconnected from all of this. And then you got Josh, who never told anybody at all, and Christian is just there, kind of
normal Christian. Yeah.
Well, yeah. It's shortly after that Christian goes to Josh and says that he's gonna basically steal his idea. And
that's right.
The biggest dick move in the whole.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
film.
it's just point number 102 or something. Why Christian's an asshole. Yeah. Not just to Danny this time, but also to everybody.
It's very telling. I think it's interesting, that he behaves that way with his friends as well, and also his attitude towards his profession and his entire life. It's very telling. It says a huge amount about him because it puts some context in him, like outside the relationship, and it says it's more of an innate personality trait of his, rather than it's just a bad relationship that he's too much of a coward.
Not knowing what he's doing and not really caring that he doesn't know
just
what
kind
he's
of
doing.
coasting through life. Yeah. Do you have anything else to say about Atastupa?
No, it's just one of the I think it's one of the best scenes in the film.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
It's 100%
That's one of the
absolutely it is.
most like cinematic scenes in the movie.
I didn't see it at the cinema, but if I had, that would have been like the boom.
Because
impact of
the
that.
sound design of it and everything, as you say, with the muted sounds and everything, it's like brilliant and horrible and amazing and so engaging.
Well, it's a real turning point for things becoming a lot more visceral and visual. From
it probably is forward. Like almost dead on the midpoint of the movie, right? I would say. Surely.
I would guess so. I don't know. Well, that might change with theatrical to director's cut, but
it is about, I think.
And certainly it's a point of shifting, right? Because they're not comfortable in the commune anymore, right? And this is where things start to fall apart.
Although the director's cut slightly alters that, right? Because you get that additional.
Well, that's what I was going to talk about next.
But you've also got in between all of that, Danny going off on her own. She needs to be on her own, crying.
Well, like Christian just leaves her to cry by herself, and then he goes and talks to Josh. And he's like, "Oh, so what did you think? What did you think about that?"
It's true. Yeah, he's in his own. He cares about himself, but also, I reckon in a way that it's the only time Christian has done anything kind of right for Danny for a long time. Like, just let her go off on her own and have her moment. He doesn't necessarily have to be.
I don't think that was the right.
I think that's only in his own selfish world.
Well, no, I'm not saying that's because purpose. That wasn't his. But he actually mistakenly almost gives her that time that she needs alone to cry. And to get some of her emotions out.
Yeah, but that's the
problem.
First time
is that she's always by herself crying. Like,
well, that's true too.
Yeah. It's just like,
I think maybe both things can be true.
Well, yeah, maybe, yeah. But yeah, so then there's this extra scene in the director's cut, right, with this additional ceremony.
Yeah.
At night. So one of the few night
which explains
scenes.
How I think Mark. Was it Connie that's dressed like that?
Yeah.
But there's also the interesting bit in between that where she's going to leave. Danny's about to leave, and then Pele comes in and holds her hand, and basically that's the bit.
Oh, is that
when? It's where he.
Is that when he talks about his parents?
Yeah, he says, "I've always felt held by family, a real family," and that happens in between that day and night. So that he almost, by bringing up the family, she doesn't want it at first, him to do that, but when he does, and he almost talks about it so sincerely, that she starts. I think that's like a turning point where she goes, "Oh, actually,"
it's the first time she doesn't have a panic attack with the word family. But she's also like Christian could walk in, and he's like, "Well, that's what I'm talking about. Like, do you feel at home with Christian?
Yeah.
That's what
do you feel held by him?
Held by him. Yeah.
And then do you feel like home?
Yeah.
With him? Like, I know there's a lot to say about Pele, but there is actually seems to be a real connection between those two. Like, they actually seem to get on. Potentially.
I don't know, man.
No, I think Pele's manipulating her, and
the whole thing is
like
built on a lie.
I think, basically,
it's just a fundamentally imbalanced relationship.
She didn't ask for him to be there. She's in his community where he's got all the control and power. And
but do you think he genuinely cares about her?
Yeah, he's attracted to her.
From a lustful point of view, I think.
Yeah.
Rather than a caring point of view. Unless he knows at that point that she is going to be part of the cult. But even then, it's for his own benefit, I think. I don't think he really cares about her.
Yeah, I think he's like hedging his bets, right? He's hoping, he's probably like explained to the cult that he wants this to happen. But surely he can't know for sure whatever's going to happen, right? Like,
the chess pieces in place.
Yeah, exactly. He can't know that she's going to be indoctrinated at the end, but and like if she ends up getting killed along the way for whatever reason, then
Because on the first watch, I was kind of like, oh, these two are really nice. Like, because it comes across like that on your first watch.
But yeah, from Danny's perspective, that could be an interpretation, but purely because they're trying to recruit her to the cult, right? Because they're trying to get her on side. They're trying to give her a family that she doesn't have. Yeah.
You do see it from her perspective, and in this point, she's got someone in her life who's finally, I don't know, been a bit more raw, honest, got through that outer layer to her and got in and actually had something, shown some empathy to her, and she's really not had anything. Christian is so, I don't know, he's so obnoxious and like nothing real about it.
Christian must have faked it better in the earlier days of their relationship.
Yeah, because
she wouldn't have dated him this long if it was.
Well, they probably did like each other at some point.
Yeah.
They probably were good at one point.
So.
Yeah.
So the night ceremony happens. Yeah, as you say, and so it's one of the few night scenes that you see in the movie, at least once they reach the commune.
Oh, well, actually, it might only be the.
It might be the only one.
Yeah, if you include the scene with them arguing, Christian and Danny, then it.
Well, isn't that like immediately after?
Yeah, if that's the same scene, then that's the only darkness scene.
Yeah.
Other than possible darkness when Josh is sneaking out. But.
Yeah. So like this is a director's cut edition, and this for me is the only director's cut edition that I could take or leave. Honestly, I love the.
So it's kind of standalone.
I love the conversation.
Really
I love the conversation between Christian and Danny afterwards. Because it's just hot.
I to a certain extent think it's unnecessary.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I love it. I don't think it adds anything new specifically. It makes Christian.
I think it goes a bit too hard on Christian being an asshole.
About the thing about the flowers.
It almost takes me out of the film how awful Christian is in this moment, because I mean, come on.
About the flowers.
I mean, there are people like that.
I know.
But yeah.
But it feels like so ham-fisted. I actually don't like this scene. I watched it and thought it was really out of place.
Yeah, that's the opinion of some people. When I was googling about the director's cut and what people thought compared to the theatrical, a lot of people. I don't share that point of view, but a lot of people think that's almost
to me it feels like an afterthought.
I think it's the only thing I would cut. And the other thing about it is it makes Connie and Simon a bit more inconsistent as well, because they obviously react as they do at the Atta Stupa, and then the next morning they leave. But then why the hell are they going to the ceremony?
Yeah, I actually don't think it works.
Yeah.
No, the more I think about it, the fact that there is actually nighttime, like full on nighttime. I don't like it.
It's a weird double down on this place isn't right. We need to get out of here. It doesn't necessarily.
It's a bit more of a
additional...
dumbed down version of the Atta Stupan thing.
And it's also,
how do you top that? Like,
if it had preceded the Atta Stupa or whatever,
I think that would have probably been better.
And Danny kind of changes his fate, the kid, by being. I
was wondering about whether her.
I think it
show mercy.
No, I think it was always a fake out. It was intended to show, possibly if they'd decided she was going to join them at that point, it was to show like protection of people that are part of the cult, right? It's supposed to be we're not barbarians.
I don't think that they do it for the benefit of the outsiders. I think they do it to like.
That was like a fake ceremony, right? Because
no, it's for the kids. It's for the kids to get used to sacrificing themselves. So that they do, because they will eventually have to sacrifice themselves if they hit 72. But even before that, like part of their brainwashing, like
and they can potentially sacrifice themselves if you take that scene at almost any age. Like there's chances to sacrifice themselves throughout. In a way, you're quite lucky to make it to 72 in that. Comedy.
Yeah, it seems to be. Yeah, there was actually. Just to go to the conversation with Danny and Christian after again. There was an interesting thing, which I'm actually not sure if it was a good idea or not. But like, because Danny is, she's a psychology student, right? Or I think psychology student, and she's basically like asking Christian like, why are they letting us see this? Like, and he's like, oh no, we're anthropology students. He's like, yes, exactly. Why you're like nosy anthropology students? Like, they can't let word of this come out.
Yeah, it was good though.
Yeah,
but it's almost too good. Like,
exactly.
It's
literally again. Like, well, Danny knows.
Well, it's basically like saying the subtext as text.
Yeah.
It's hammers home the points a little too hard. It tells us things that we've already been shown. I guess it's helpful for people on the first time watch that maybe didn't pick up on these things, but I think
then maybe
it's too
you should
heavy-handed.
pick up on it in such, because everything else is so subtle and well constructed. This actually does feel like throw it in here.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah, if anything, I've seen scenes like that when there's been studio interference where they needed a more clear-cut narrative. They'd insert a scene like that just to basically, as if it was a book, completely externalize all of the feelings and thoughts of the main characters.
Well, it's basically
give
to like try. Yeah, I can understand it as a
clarity.
studio note that was in the theatrical cut and not the director's cut, because it feels like, okay, the studio's like, we need to get everybody on the same page, so we're just going to tell them what to think. You know what I mean? Before the kind of escalation of the
Strange
second
that
half.
Ari Aster thought that his script needed that.
Yeah. So,
I guess there's loads like that within films we never see. They film it, see if it works, and then go. Meh. But like you say, it's interesting though that it actually made the director's
He didn't
cut.
necessarily know how much ambiguity he needed in the movie, and we don't know the filming order of these scenes. That could have been filmed earlier on, for all we know. Who knows?
But so, if you were gonna do it yourself, then Dave, would you keep it or cut it?
I would cut that. I would probably keep everything else.
Yeah, and cut that.
But just cut.
Well,
that.
I would cut it as well. What about you, Mike?
If it was me, I think the theatrical cut is much better. I think you can drop everything in the director's cut. Not to say that I think those scenes don't have merit, but I can understand why they would be the ones to be cut. And I think if I was in charge, they made a good decision to cut those.
What do you reckon to when they go back? She has a sleeping pill. What do you think of her dream sequence? What do you take away from the dream sequence?
My initial thought was abandonment. Because I
Remind me of the dream sequence.
so you can do it, Joe, if you want.
Yeah, it's where they drive away in the car. There's no one else in the sleeping quarters.
Oh right,
And she sees them driving away and
she's
like
been left
smirking
behind.
at her.
Yeah.
But there's also the added bit with the smoke, like the exhaust fumes coming out of her mouth.
Yeah, tying into
stuff. And her
sister.
family. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I like the smoke in her dream much more than I do in reality, the one that is in reality by the lake, because it's more about her paranoia, I would say, in that one, that they don't really see her as friends. It's almost as if this dream, to me anyway, it's like she sees herself in this moment as a tag along. She knows it's her moment of clarity that she is an outsider to this friend group, and she's only in it.
Let's not forget that is fact as well.
Yeah.
She is only there because Christian invited her when he didn't want to, and none of the others want there, apart from possibly Pele.
But within their relationship,
definitely Pele.
Yeah.
In their relationship, she tries to keep on convincing herself that it's real, that there is something there that's salvageable, and that. So, am I saying that wrong?
Because she feels dependent on him.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah,
The minuscule things he's given her.
But in your
apparently.
dream, she can't hide away from it. Almost.
Well, so do you think that that's the point where she broke up with Christian in her mind, because she had that clarity?
I think it's a moment of clarity to her that she is alone, perhaps.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. I don't know. What about you, Mike? What do you
It's a
reckon?
multi-step process, I think, in terms of her deciding that the relationship is over, because it's declining as the movie goes on. But I think it takes a bit further on from that when Simon leaves and she accuses Christian as being a person that would just do that. That's kind of the death of the relationship. We're not quite there yet when the dream happens, I think, but.
Yeah, but maybe she's already having
Maybe
those thoughts now, like through that dream, that we can kind of understand.
Yeah, but she's not ready to vocalize them yet.
No, but like we understand.
Potentially that whole thing with the smoke coming out of her mouth. Perhaps there's something within actually not being able to vocalize it.
Yeah, perhaps.
Like, you're still full of something. There's like a poisonous gas.
Yeah, it's all
building in her.
interpretational, right?
Literally,
Suffocation.
literally her parents' death,
Literally
stopping her from doing what she needs to do.
I mean, suffocation is
Yeah.
just like a synonym for being unable to voice something, right?
Yeah.
Being unable to verbalize.
Christian also decides to write his thesis on the Haga commune.
What an
irritating
arsehole.
Josh. Danny is disturbed by the ceremonies, but Pele convinces her to stay. He explains that he, too, was orphaned after his parents perished in a fire. Connie and Simon demand to leave and are individually driven to a nearby train station. Apparently.
Are they though?
Apparently.
Are they?
During his thesis research, Christian is told that outsiders are sometimes brought into the commune for mating purposes to avoid incest. He is encouraged to participate but refuses. After unwittingly urinating on a sacred tree, Mark is...
The best bit.
Right there, Dave.
Were you waiting for that bit about urination, Mark?
Yeah, love that bit.
Yes.
Put your disgusting dick away.
After unwittingly urinating on a sacred tree, Mark is lured away by one of the female commune members. That night, Josh sneaks out of bed to take illicit photographs of sacred text. He is caught by a half-naked man, Ulf, wearing Mark's skinned face and is bludgeoned to death.
Yes.
It's up there.
Isn't he the worst? Like, Josh is bad. Josh is one of the worst.
I don't see
people.
why you got such a hard on for hating on Josh. Josh is like the best one.
No, he's not.
I think he is.
None of them are.
I mean, other than Danny,
I
obviously.
know, Mark is the
Like,
best one. And
yeah.
Mark,
I do actually like Mark better than
Nah.
Josh.
yeah, Josh is worse.
he's
Josh
just
is
an
way
asshole.
worse.
He's just a big bumbling asshole, is what Mark
Yeah,
is.
but Josh is an asshole by choice.
Nah,
He
yeah.
chooses to be knowledgeable, but also a real arsehole about it.
Yeah, that's... I guess.
He has
depends-
no respect at
what
all.
kind of-
No respect. They're just like...
Mark is just of who he is.
Mm.
He's got a limit, whereas Josh is
But I think
limitless in his knowledge.
Josh is there for a reason and belongs there, I guess. He's there for his anthropology degree, and it makes sense that he's there documenting this kind of thing.
But can't
Mark
you do-
isn't supposed to be there. Mark is just kind of floundering around, causing a nuisance.
But you're putting Josh's need to do his academia above Mark's need in a hierarchy. You're
But
putting
nothing-
what's wrong with what Mark's doing? He's just going there, to
Yeah, that-
impregnate a few Swedish.
They're both
birds.
disrespectful. Like,
Yeah.
why is Josh better than Mark?
Well, he's supposedly. I mean, it's for his own aggrandization, but a small token of that is actually to bring it back to this knowledge back to Western society, I guess. So there's somewhat of a noble aim mixed up all in the.
Is that noble though? Should we not just leave these communities alone?
But he was invited.
Yeah. Okay.
So-
fair point.
He was invited,
Yeah, but like he
and therefore
didn't actually have permission to write about any of it when he was invited. Like he basically annoyed Pele enough to get there.
Correct.
But
I mean, the fact that he was seeking out their approval, right? So, would he have actually written about it? Christian probably would have written about it without permission, but would he?
of course he would have. Yes.
No.
Yeah, because then he went
put-
to the sacred texts.
he
Yeah.
put a lot of onus on the permission, though.
Yeah.
Even if he did go to illicitly take a
Yeah,
photo
which
of
means
the book.
permission doesn't mean anything to him.
Well, name
He's-
one other point in the movie that he breaks the rules.
One is enough.
One is enough.
Yeah.
Mark did it like 20 times.
Yeah, but Mark does it unwittingly. Like, he doesn't know he's such a buffoon. He just
A fool.
is.
Yeah, but ignorance is not an excuse for unlawful behaviour.
No. That's true too. Yes. Yeah, but on the morality scale, is Josh's worse because
Well,
he
on my
does-
morality scale, I think Josh isn't as bad, personally. He's still a dickhead, obviously.
Yeah.
They're all still terrible other than Danny. But, yeah, I don't know. What was the original point?
So, Christian,
we're
when
comparing them.
this academic race,
Yeah, and so, yeah, Josh was in the right here. He was being... Christian was basically stealing his
Yeah,
idea.
Well, definitely.
Piggybacking on what he wanted.
asking Pele first, he got in there. Probably, he's not going to have done it early, is he? He's probably going to have done it
Right
just
right
before
after
he went to
test
Yeah.
Once Christian decides that he wants to do it on the Hogger, he kind of is. I mean,
He's
like
half-assing it the whole way.
He's like the night before an exam trying to cram it, right? But he is actually trying to do something. Like he basically ignores Danny.
I don't think we should give him any credence for that. He's literally just there
I know you
asking
haven't-
like stock terrible questions.
No, but
Doesn't he ask about incest
Yeah,
at
yeah,
one
yeah,
point?
this
yeah,
He's
yeah.
asking
For
like
me, that's a huge part of the film. That line about the incest, but we'll get to that after this academia thing.
well, no, the reason I mentioned it about Christian was because he actually does get to Pele first, right?
But then again, Pele is from a community. Let's take out for a second the fact that he's probably orchestrated a lot of this stuff. But if you take that out of it, he is actually from a community that shares everything. And he is asking those two to share the knowledge and to share what they've learned. If you're looking at it from Pele as a person who has been brainwashed and is now innocently like being brainwashed to the point where he believes in this way of thinking and sharing and knowledge, he is perhaps asking his friends to just work together to do this. He asked me first, but you make it work. And now
I think he's just pitting them against each other.
Yeah, I don't think anything he does at the commune matters because he knows they're going to die.
Yeah, he's just having his little fun.
Or do they bring it on themselves? I'm not 100% convinced.
I think he's probably just hoping it distracts Christian long enough for him to go
move
bang
into
Danny.
Danny.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm still not 100% convinced they're going to die.
I do. Like,
I think their entire purpose of being there is to die, and Pele knows that. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not.
I think so. Although,
I mean, who knows? Maybe there was like a vote going on, and Christian almost won the May Queen vote. Like,
no, but I think Danny's survival is somewhat accidental. But I also think they all did things to deserve it in like. So
yeah, but like that's the thing about like
in horror movie terms, I should say.
Well, that's what makes it an Ari Aster slasher in my mind, because like he was basically tasked with making a slasher, right? And so he has to have this thing where they like commit the sin and they get killed. But then there's the Ari Aster component of it where they basically have no control over anything. There are very few characters that actually have control, just like Hereditary. And so that's how I saw it, and I think all of them except Danny, it was preordained.
It's quite interesting if you do term it as a slasher, being as though most of the deaths are actually off screen.
Exactly. Again, because
like
because the relationship is the front and center, and the horror is the background. Yeah,
but then the sort of the bodies that they do find is quite slasher-esque, isn't it?
Well,
like Halloween.
That's like the like when they set up all the bodies right at the end for the final girl to find.
Yeah, which does happen in slashers, right?
Yeah,
They open a cupboard and
classic,
it's like 5
Michael
bodies
Myers
hanging.
in Halloween type stuff.
Incidentally, around this time, after Simon disappears, and then Connie's like, "Where's he going?" And then she gets taken away as well. The next scene, it's Mark in front of the big triangular temple, and you can hear screaming.
Yeah.
You can hear screaming.
Yeah, but he doesn't notice because he's too busy looking.
Well,
at the
no, I
girl,
think he
right?
does. He
does.
He reacts to it,
He
but then
does
he's like,
because he sees
and then
Connie.
he gets
Because he says something later in the film when they're sitting down where Danny's asking
he did see
around,
her getting dragged off. Yeah.
No. He sees she was going for the sprinting in the Olympics. He says something along the lines of sprinting the Olympics, and he's literally got the answer right there.
Oh yeah, he saw her running.
He's got the answer there, and then heard a scream, and it's like he sees that.
Yeah.
I think we're looking at his perspective, seeing that when we see him in front of the pyramid type place, and he's so stupid that he doesn't recognize it.
The fool.
But he keeps stumbling on the truth because he pisses on the tree. He shows how like crazy they kind of are.
Yeah.
And then he sees Connie sprinting, and then he also goes, "Is she going to kill me? They're going to kill me."
Literally the guy. Yeah.
Like he knows, and he just can't connect the dots.
Yeah.
I don't know though. Like him pissing on the tree, it's not crazy to if it is their sacred tree to
but the
reaction
reaction is so overtly.
It's at least like
ridiculous.
outside our normal experience. It's something you would know.
Yeah, but
it would make you uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I
but
think
it's
being around someone
synonymous
reacting like that.
to West like gravestones, right? Is typically what we have.
Yeah, but I reckon you'd be more pissed off if someone did that than cry for about 2 hours afterwards and go, "I was meant to protect this." So I doubt.
Perhaps.
But maybe not crazy.
It'd still be like an emotional experience.
But it's part of their. It's part of them in a way, I guess, of who they are and what they believe.
He definitely plays the fool there. That is his.
Yeah, that's
jam.
his
That's
role,
why he's
and that's what
made up in the way that he is.
Yeah, he's the fool in the ceremony, isn't he? Yeah. Do you think Mark was ever a candidate for breeding? Because I don't believe that Josh ever was, because he's
Purely
not
because
white.
he's got that female love interest that's kind of hinted at but never.
Yeah,
comes
well,
to
I was
fruition.
wondering.
Do you reckon
about,
that's real?
I was wondering
Maybe
about.
he was like the backer.
Well, I was wondering about her role, like, because honestly, all they need to know about him is that he follows his dick, and then she's perfect for manipulating him to get him alone to kill him, right? Which is exactly what happens. So, like, was there ever a chance? And
Is she actually attracted to him? We know when they see each other in the when they go. She comes in without Austin Powers actually and leaves in the shed or whatever she says, and then he's like, "Did you see that? Did you see that?"
Oh yeah.
Like, if that happens in the Austin
we
Powers
don't really
bit.
have any understanding on how they select the men that they want for procreation, right? Well, why would they choose Christian over anybody else?
Well, because
He's quite an attractive man.
he's
isn't
attractive. He's strong. He's tall. He's intelligent enough. I guess.
Pele could have brought 20 men that just fit that exact description.
But
Why Christian?
But Christian is a bit of an arsehole, and he doesn't have much depth. There's
But
not much
it would
to
have been
him.
easier to bring a man that wasn't in a relationship, right?
Yes, but he wasn't meant to be
Mm.
because they were convincing him not to be with Danny, and then her family died, and that was completely out of anyone's control. So they weren't actually meant to be together at that point, and Danny is kind of the happy accident which happens for Pele.
Unless it is actually down to the... Because it was said that the woman that takes his seed
yeah.
is like looked at his pictures and so on and approved it. Maybe it was down to her, and so
Yeah,
these were
maybe
sent
she
back
got to
and-
pick. Yeah,
yeah.
all of them. Yeah. But also maybe not. You know what I mean? Like it depends how much the
We're
the
not told
elders
that as part of the
yeah,
movie.
Yeah. Yeah. So what did you think of Josh's death? His death scene?
Well, his whole ending is sudden and brutal.
Mm-hmm.
And in that scene where he goes in, because he's been told in basically a couple of scenes before, isn't he, that do not go in there and you cannot take pictures. And him even asking that question is offensive.
Can I take
to
pictures? No,
Of course not.
Of course, yeah,
Like, obviously not.
yeah,
You know.
yeah.
And that's where you learn more about this incestual
The
oracle
yeah.
character. And then in his scene, you do see, if you stop, he's not actually alone in that. When he thinks I don't know if he thinks he's alone or not when he's taking the pictures of that book.
You can see in the background,
But
can't you, the person that...
Or not
puts
even
him
that.
away.
There's someone in the bed sleeping. When they turn the camera around and he thinks it's Mark, there's someone in the bed sleeping there as well. So it's like he's not really thought this out.
Oh right, really?
There's
Is that the Oracle then sleeping there? Do you think?
I'm not sure, because if you pause it there's someone sleeping in the bed on the left of the frame.
Oh right.
There's actually someone there, but I thought almost that the Oracle was the one with the Mark's face on, perhaps. But is the Oracle a woman? That's the other thing.
Well, it's confirmed to be the guy that killed Mark,
Ulf.
which is
It's
the guy
Ulf.
that,
Yeah, it's Ulf.
that like
is
yeah,
it?
yeah.
Okay.
tree master.
That was like it was a
or whatever his
little
name was.
reward,
Yeah.
like a payback.
It
He gets
is.
to kill him and
Yeah.
skin him.
And in the
He's wearing his
How
legs.
is that confirmed?
He's wearing his legs.
I
as
missed
well.
that. Is that confirmed within it?
well, I mean, if you watch the behind the scenes documentary, you see the guy gushing over how excited he is to wear the
really?
the mask. of,
Yeah, I think you probably have to just recognize the eyes of the guy.
Yeah, okay. It's very Leatherfacey, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very
I mean, I
Leatherfacey.
don't like that scene so much. I don't think it fits the tone of the rest of the movie that he's wearing the skin of Mark. I think it's a bit...
Yeah, but it's not normal practice for the cult, I don't think. I think
he
this,
disparages him
this
so
guy.
much.
Well,
specifically.
maybe that's why it feels
and
totally
so
off.
exactly, but that's intentional, right? Like it.
And I think Mark was already pissing them off. Like, he
Yeah.
was already an awful person.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
who was,
I would be pissed off in Mark's company. So
Yeah. And he was kind of already like on thin ice, you would assume, with when during the during that,
Yeah.
he was already like vaping and making stupid comments and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, they would have seen and heard all of this, just ignored him.
Yeah, but yeah.
And you know how that happens. That's like Ned Flanders when he tries to stop like Homer like breathing in church.
Oh, and it's
like where are you? Like it's like that almost with Mark.
Did you like it? Did you think it was?
I like the scene because
Yeah.
I think it is so brutal, and
I like the scene in isolation. I just don't think it fits the movie so well.
I don't know. I
think it's
quite telling about that
too,
character. I think because you get very little about the actual characters within the cult, but like it says a lot about that guy Ulfright.
There is
but you're reading a lot into it to assume that that's wholly his idea. It's left open whether that's because what was the name of the dance that they were doing or the game that the kids were playing?
Skin the Fool.
Right. So that could
Mark
be a part
is the
of the.
Yeah.
And they do make him look like a jester.
Oh, they do at the end. Yeah, he's the fool. Yeah.
But it's a little ambiguous anyway. I mean, we know that he needed to be skinned. His face needed to be skinned off for the doll at the end, right? That they burn.
Yeah, but I don't know necessarily if he was just agreed upon at that time. Yeah, maybe. Like, maybe the skinning was going to happen anyway, but he got to wear it and commit because he didn't have to wear that face, right, to do the murder.
No, it was just sitting around wearing the face for fun. And
yeah,
there was a break in. So.
Interestingly, before Josh is killed, the way they film him in that last scene, I sort of wrote down that is he worried? Is there something? Has it finally clicked for him? Because he almost is. I know it could just be that
he knows
he's waiting to get up in that night and he knows he's taking a risk, or he's reading his book and he's got like the symbols and he's got some writing on there. Has he clicked that something is happening? Because he gives Danny a sleeping pill, and then he obviously doesn't take one himself, and he's just laying there ready to. Yeah,
he keeps his trainers on, doesn't he?
Yeah, he keeps his trainers on and takes pictures. But is he in that moment going to take those pictures and then go? Is there potential that he in this moment is in it for himself because he knows something? Because they frame him really interestingly, like he's worried. I do
actually remember what you're saying, and it is possible. Yeah, I guess we'll just never.
I feel like
we don't
for
get
me,
enough
I
of his
get
perspective.
I don't think we
fully
can
realize.
But you are right that I do remember that shot that you're talking about, where he's looking like he's almost had a moment of realization.
I feel like he's smart enough to know that he is done for at this point, perhaps.
So that makes going back to the asshole Josh thing. That makes him less of an asshole, right? If he's threatened by.
Well, he probably shouldn't have given Danny a sleeping pill.
Threatened by the danger.
If he wasn't an asshole.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
Surely it makes him more of an asshole if you go with what I was saying, and that he is going to leave after that, after he takes those pictures, and that's his last thing he's going to do in the commune, and then go. He hasn't warned his friends, so that makes him the worst of the worst, does it not?
But,
no, that might not be the case.
There is no evidence necessarily.
No.
But I do remember like seeing that look of realization on his face, and he's
smart
he
enough
is an intelligent
to know.
character, and also the whole thing about Connie and Simon.
Well, that will be playing on his mind.
Might
surely
not be adding up for him.
Yeah, I think anyone that was there, apart from Christian the dumbass.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
and
Mark the also dumbass would have realised that that's got like red flags all over it.
Following day, Danny and Christian are pressured into drinking a hallucinogenic tea. Danny wins a maypole dancing competition and is crowned May Queen. What's up there? So, what do you think of May Queen?
Well, I think the way that it filmed the actual dance is
really cool, right?
Yeah,
like the top
cool.
down and the change different directions on the.
Yeah. Because if you watch the behind the scenes documentary, it's a track with a camera on it circulating as they're dancing around.
Oh right, to get
there's like
additional rotation.
Two circles with a track with a camera and a camera operator on it, and it's
cool,
beautiful.
Was the once Danny is drugged and she kind of starts dancing, well, she's pretty unsure at first, but she very quickly starts to enjoy it. Was it the first time in the whole movie that she smiled?
Could well be. I think it might be.
Possibly.
Apart from maybe being comforted by Pele.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, unless she smiled the first time they took the drugs, right? Before she started feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah, I guess. I guess.
Yeah.
That's
she's
one of
okay
the
then.
only
Before she
other
has
high
before it
points.
goes bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
But certainly, like at the commune, I think it's the first time she smiled.
Mm.
So I forgot to add that there's that scene where Danny is really concerned for Connie's and Simon's whereabouts. Like, well, Simon's gone off, and Christian goes, "Oh no,
what a dick!"
Anyway,
yeah.
And he's like, "So is there incest here?" Like,
Yeah.
In fact, we're skipping over one of the biggest Christian bad. Charlie bit my finger. No, when he throws Josh under the bus when they're talking.
Oh
about
yeah,
Yeah,
this morning. He's like, we don't associate with
We
him.
don't even call him a friend.
Yeah,
I don't even
yeah.
know that guy. Yeah.
Because
And Danny's there just looking at him like who
are
is
you
this
serious?
guy that I know?
Yeah.
I reckon consciously this where Danny finally goes, wow, he's a dickhead.
Yeah.
Like in these
done.
two scenes, this one with where he goes straight back in asking about, oh, is there incest within this? And she looks at him like,
Are you serious? After what's just happened, yeah.
Like, and then goes like, and then the next day she looks in disgust and go, we don't associate ourselves with them. Like,
I don't know whether he stole it or not, but
Yeah.
if he did,
We're
like,
so-
we don't
so-
even know him.
But it's
like,
just-
Not even friends.
It is probably one of the more overt moments in the film where the commune are kind of playing like a game of
playing a
chess.
role. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very overtly. We know now that they've killed Josh, and everyone in the fucking commune will know about it.
Yeah.
But they're going, oh, someone's stolen it, and they're making it seem as if they.
Well, this is why I question
Run
everything
away.
that they say. They're liars, like they are. When
They
it
are.
serves their
That's
ends.
the only one of the only moments in the film that we get to see them explicitly lying. I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but again, it just takes one example, right, for you to go back and question everything. But yeah, like just the balls on them to like murder them both, and then come to Christian and accuse him, like
It made me laugh if he went a bit rogue, that guy who was so upset, and they had to come up with this.
Oh, they have to
Go,
just
my
make it
God,
work. Yeah,
Fuck, how are we going to get through this?
Yeah.
They were meant to be here for 9 days and go home. My
Yeah.
God.
we need to add 2 more sacrifices quickly.
Yeah. At least we've got that.
Yeah, you got nothing else to say about the May Queen dance?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, God. It's great.
Yeah, brilliant. Moving on.
I didn't expect such in-depth analysis going on this podcast, but clearly I was wrong. Yeah. Show me the bit where it says it was great on there.
It doesn't say
In
that.
big letters, the whole page.
Yeah.
It's what I think of the like two pivotal scenes happening against each other, and it's the moment where Danny is
Yes,
kind of finding her family and being connected, and Christian is being used.
Yeah, the entire power dynamic flips.
Yeah.
Yeah, shall we talk about Christian as well, and then we can talk about everything together?
Yeah.
Okay, so Christian also drinks the hallucinogenic tea and is coerced into a sex ritual.
Well,
We'll get to it.
coerced, is he?
Into a sex ritual to impregnate.
Well, he's drugged,
Maya.
man. Like,
Mate, it's
I don't know whether
definitely
you
he's
can see-
definitely not.
Yes.
You
okay.
can't label
Yeah.
that consent.
Yeah.
However, they leave it very much up to our interpretation when he's in that building. If
Yes,
he
it
is-
cuts. It cuts, doesn't
Because
it?
they say to him, we're going to offer you, it's a one-time deal. Like, you can have sex with our 50
Yeah, but he'd already said no previous to that point.
Had he said no? Where did he
Well,
explicitly
he's
say no?
well because she appeals to the anthropologist in him because she doesn't know him very well, I guess.
for research.
Yeah.
He almost
Yeah.
goes, for research purposes.
Yeah, but
why
then
don't you
he's
fuck
like,
her?
is there any way I can
mean-
observe without participating? He does say that. He does
Yeah.
say that. And then it
To
cuts.
give him his credit,
And then
he
it
is an
cuts,
asshole,
and then it
but he
cuts.
does resist to a certain extent.
But
I
then
doubt.
also like because he says that's the last thing he says and it cuts away, and then when he's sat down watching Danny dance, he's also offered the tea and he also says no. I think he's like, oh, this isn't okay, but then he does eventually accept it. So I guess
think you're giving him too much.
I think this is the one and only instance where I'm going to say
No, he's definitely
Christian
definitely a
actually needs
victim.
a little
Yeah.
bit of credit here.
well, he
He's
gets to be
definitely a
he gets to be
victim
the
of
he gets to be
manipulation by the cult.
he gets to be the final girl now. This is the beginning of like the final girl sequence for him, right? Incidentally, that was one of the reasons Jack Reynor took the role. Was he insisted full frontal nudity for himself?
I don't think he had that going in. I read that it was just like
that was appealed. Like,
he visualized it in that way.
Yeah.
I have doubts about him being. He was coerced in the end, but my interpretation of that whole sequence is that he is progressively becoming more enamored with Maya. I think he's becoming
Under the influence of drugs, though.
No, but not all the time, because he goes up to her earlier in the film, in the director's cut. I'm not sure it's in the theatrical cut, but in the director's cut, he goes up to her and tries to speak English to her, and she can only say hello.
Yeah.
And then someone else comes around, but you can see everyone around are going, "Oh, this is fun.
This is working.
good."
Yeah.
And then you hear Pele sort of say later on that, oh, she's got consent from the parents at 15 to have sex, to mate. And he just kind of like brushes it off somewhat. And then you go to that scene where he's in the house with her. And yes, he does kind of go, but
I think it's always passive, though. I don't think he's actively searching it out.
No,
he's passively going along with it, like he passively goes along with everything in his life.
Because if someone came up to you and said, oh, come into my house, sit down with me, and then they think they're going to interrogate you about the disappearance of a book, but instead they go, do you want to have sex with our 15-year-old daughter? We give you permission. Your reaction in that moment is to go, what the fuck? What's wrong with you? And he doesn't. And he goes...
But his like sensibilities about applying his Western morals to the community is already broken by the fact that he's seen the Ateshta bar and he's seen like these things happen. He's also,
though, the one who talks about of getting into their culture. And he mentions this earlier in the film to Danny when
he after at a stupa, right?
He says about, oh, well, we have to acculturate with these people, and Danny's like, why are you? Yeah, well, you're wrong. What's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? So he's almost going along with their practices, even though his Western morals and Western law and everything that around him should say do the opposite. But he doesn't actively enough. I know you're saying he's a passive character, but surely there's a switch in someone when you go and they ask you to have sex with an underage person that you go, that's a bit too far, you know.
But I still think he's passive every step of the way. Even when he walks into the barn, he has to kind of be encouraged to have sex with this person, right? He has to be guided all the way and manipulated all the way.
There is manipulation.
I don't think it's something he was seeking out. It's something that they were seeking for him.
But what I'm saying
and
is...
he didn't resist.
Yeah, he didn't, but he's still in control here. He hasn't taken the drugs yet. And then he comes back out and he goes and sees Danny in this, and she's quite happy. And she sees him, makes eye contact, and she's like, oh, I've got a smile on my face. And he looks almost jealous of that.
Yeah, she frowns actually seeing him. Her smile goes away the second she sees him.
Well, sees that he's not
involved. He's not having a good time. He's like, oh, I'm, it's not about me anymore. Yeah.
For the first time, he's the burden, not her being the burden.
Yeah.
Right?
And he's also, so they leave that scene where it says, well, basically, what do you think? And he never gives the answer. It's up to our interpretation. And my personal one is that he says, oh, I will, because he's got such a face on him after that. He's got such like a contemplation, like, so, am I doing the right thing? I'm doing this for research purposes. And then he goes, sits down. The woman brings him the cup and goes, oh, it's spring water, and it will give you courage, basically. It'll
open you up to the influences.
The influences, exactly. And then,
to be fair, that does make sense if he has agreed to do it.
And then
make him a bit more open to it.
And then he doesn't drink it immediately. He looks at Mayor next to him over there, and then, like Dutch courage, and takes it down like a shot. That's how I've interpreted. Not necessarily complete. See something completely different.
I think he was manipulated into taking that drug in the similar way to Danny was manipulated into taking the drug in the first portion of. But
he knows at this point it's a drug, and he knows if he does it, he's probably going to be. She's literally explicitly said.
Yeah, but everybody around him was under the influence of drugs.
I think they've mixed. It's especially strong. I think this one. I think it's a lot stronger.
Yeah, from the fact that he could barely he can barely interact with the outside world, basically. Yeah, and he was immediately like quietened by the clap of the man next to him.
Yeah, God, that was horrible, by the way. Yeah. But like during the sex as well, I think he has a moment about in the middle.
Yeah.
He has a moment of clarity.
Yeah, when they start forcing his ass cheeks.
He stops thrusting. When he's like, just a moment of like, oh, what am I doing? And then the woman makes him finish, and and then he becomes like the final girl then, right? Because then he runs away immediately.
But he's the least. I mean, I've never seen like a final girl who I really just didn't give a shit for at that point.
Well, that's the point, right? It's like the subversion of it, because we're supposed to be brainwashed by the cult as the audience as well. That's why it's an interesting spin on a slasher, in my opinion.
It pivots to you being in favor of the death of these people.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I think he perhaps deserves it. If anyone in that group
Exactly, that's
deserves
the movie
it.
working.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The movie
yeah.
telling
Because he
you-
doesn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't. No,
Does he not?
No,
he had
doesn't.
sex with a minor.
Well, the age of consent in Sweden is 15, apparently. We should
Yeah.
probably fact check that, but
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I read that. as well.
yeah.
Yes.
Make it okay, but
However,
No, yes, but like also,
that's us applying our Western morals to their community, just like.
but
they're
isn't
doing,
that
right?
exactly though that he has Western morals?
Yes.
So surely he knows it's wrong, and he does it. He does all of this. He's agreed to it before he has these drugs. I'm not 100% certain, but it's interesting.
I don't know. I think he's manipulated all the way. Personally, I mean, he's obviously an asshole, but I don't think we can put this specifically on him.
I mean,
not without him, like the fact that he was pushed towards it.
Yeah, I think he's a victim, at least in this final sequence.
I do actually have an interesting bit of trivia about the sex barn bit.
Oh, I have some as
I
well.
don't know whether you've seen the trailer for Midsommar. There's a bit in the trailer where you see a pair of feet levitate and move.
Oh, really?
Flying.
Okay.
Yeah, and Ari Aster was asked about this in an interview, and apparently the original filmed take was that Christian was going to float towards the woman.
Oh, cool.
Purely in his head, obviously, as part of
yeah.
like his tripping experience. But he cut it, and the reason he gave was that he didn't want confused people nagging him about what it meant and just like thinking it was real. Yeah.
I think it makes it a bit less ambiguous. Like the metaphor of that is basically like he's being transported there by the situation and by the drug in that scenario. I think it actually makes it less ambiguous.
It takes the onus of getting there himself.
I think so. It's more of like a visual
So,
metaphor of that. Yeah.
And I think at this point also he's the only person now left in civilian clothing. They're all wearing white. They look very pure. Everyone looks quite pure.
Yeah, and Danny's now wearing white too.
And Danny's wearing white. She is now part of it. She was in the kitchen or the clothing, the textiles.
Oh, you noticed
bit.
that as well. Like,
Yeah.
but at some point, a couple of scenes ago, when she's making the pie and they put a bit of white on it,
That's
don't
it.
they? Just like it's
She's
just a
becoming-
visual step of her coming in. Yeah,
She's becoming slowly part of the cult.
yeah.
And Christian is being left behind throughout this, and he is still wearing dark colors, like he's wearing.
But
blacks.
that's also important as far as Danny's journey. She is the protagonist, right? And he is the odd one out in this group that needs to be removed for her journey towards being a cult member.
But now he really looks removed. He looks.
But that scene when she's
completely
at
other.
the end of the big long table, right? And he's just kind of there as like the odd one out at the table. It's like as far as the cult's concerned, that's basically highlighting for her subconsciously that he doesn't fit.
Yeah.
So if she wants to stay dressed as she is dressed and be as she is, he doesn't fit. He needs to be removed.
However, she does, even after everything before the sex
Can
scene.
Christian come?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
She still cares about him enough. In that moment, it's like one last. It's a weak attempt.
Yeah,
but it's one last attempt.
But it's a transfer of the dependence from him to the cult.
Yeah.
And because she'd been with him for I think 4 years or something, she like knows it to the years, week, and day at one point, and he gets it wrong. But because it's such a strong dependence, and they've always had that, the cult needs to just slowly willow it down. She doesn't fight that point. She doesn't kick up a fuss about the fact that Christian isn't allowed to come along. She just voices her opinion and then just lets it go, right?
So the May Queen scene, what do you think of the speaking Swedish section?
Well, she's not speaking Swedish.
No.
I can, yeah. I mean, I don't.
Only if you don't believe in the fantastical side, I guess.
What?
To an extent.
The hell are you talking about? Fantastical
You're presented
side?
with something, right? For all we know, their religion is correct, and their drugs are so beautiful and brilliant that they can teach.
Oh,
you
team
Swedish.
cult over here. Hell no.
Yeah.
No.
They're right about everything all along. That's a big twist.
Yeah.
I don't know if anything that we saw from her perspective was literally happening necessarily. Like, she was probably dancing. I think she might have.
No, it's
I think she might have fallen over a couple of times.
It's
like,
going back to the fairy tale.
she's
thing,
having
right?
yes.
We're getting
yeah.
the fairy tale version.
Yeah.
We don't know what the real version is.
Yeah.
It's only what she's experiencing, and that's what we're presented.
Yeah.
with. So no, she didn't speak Swedish. Probably didn't win the dance contest.
Oh no, I like
There
the
probably
idea.
wasn't even a contest. It was just leading her around in a circle as she's out of her mind,
And then
I like the
after
accidental.
and then giving her a crown. Yeah,
You won, by the way. What?
I enjoyed the accidental nature of it, though. I like to think
it's a possibility, and I don't discount that as possible.
I like the premeditation of it all much more. Like the sinister undertone throughout everything. Like I just find that more satisfying and more interesting.
But I don't know. Are you taking the side of that this cult is completely wrong in every sense? Because I don't think they mess everything up. I think they have interesting points, and some of what they say is
most
actually right.
most cults do. That's how they get people in.
That's all applying our morals to another culture, which is what we've bemoaned from the main characters, right? They're doing their thing. I'm sure, like 700 years ago, that was a much more normal thing to be doing.
It wasn't that long ago that we were drowning witches.
Yeah, exactly, and that was
In our
quote
culture.
unquote moral at the
Yeah.
time. So applying our modern morals to their
And it's also an
Society.
interesting appropriation of people going in there and almost they don't change a thing, do they? They get caught up in their world, but their whole culture is kind of influenced by outsiders. And you're saying there then that because it revolves around them 100%, everything they do is set up in such a way that it is for those outsiders. Especially at the end, if
but
the May Queen contest.
We don't know how often it happens. This could be once every year. It could be once every 5 years, 90 years. It's all a dressed up act that we're seeing through the eyes of the visitors, right? It's exactly the same as the Wicker Man. We have no idea what Christopher Lee's doing the rest of the time.
Not speaking in the Scottish accent.
But yeah, but when Edward Woodward's there, he's dressing up. He's part of the festival, right? And it's still a festival when we're there. It's the Midsommar festival. They're probably living their lovely, nice, chill lives the rest of the year.
I don't think it's just for the visitors. Because if it was just for the visitors, why would they bother? Just kill them. Get them in, kill them. You know, so I think that...
Well, it's not solely for the visitors,
No,
but it's
I
part of
agree.
tradition.
I agree.
It's tradition and like putting on a show for them.
Mm-hmm.
They're the two main concerns. Yeah.
I wonder, you know, if like the pageantry and the ritual is a good way of identifying potential recruits as well, by just seeing how people react to it all. Maybe people are only brought in as sacrifices or breeding, but maybe rarely you'll get someone like Danny, where the stars just align, and you know, it's, you know, watching the outsiders' reactions to all these ceremonies and how well they embrace the culture. You know, it could be an element to it as well.
But it was quite a long and rocky road until she gained acceptance of the cult, right? Like, she wanted to leave halfway through, and if it weren't for Christian, she would have left. So it is somewhat down to chance, the fact that she ended up with the cult.
Yeah, well, I think that with Danny, a lot of things... I think things are less planned with her. Like, she wasn't, like, brought there to be a sacrifice necessarily, like the others were. I think Pele had intentions on her. And I think that the Horger as a whole wanted her to join as well. I think that's why they were making such an effort to try and ingratiate her.
Although you're saying, do you think you're saying the rest of them were brought in to be sacrifices or for breeding purposes?
But Danny was almost like a question mark for them. Like, it could go anyway.
Do you not think any of the rest of them could potentially, if you're saying that they get involved and if they show potential, they become more than that? Do you think there was ever a chance that, say, Mark survived if he embraced the culture?
I don't know. I've been wondering that a lot myself. Because they do say that they need 9 sacrifices. They say that this time there's 4 outsiders, so there has to be 4 people from the cult. I don't know. I don't remember them saying exactly that it has to be 4. I mean, they bring more than 4 people, right?
Should we get to the sex bit then, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, just before that, I guess the meal, Danny's meal, she's in control now. She has, or a sense of control. Not necessarily it's real, but to her, she is now sitting people down. Like, she's the first one to sit. They get her to eat whatever it is
it's
fish or
some like
what is it?
fish, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a haddock or something.
Herring, isn't it?
Herring,
Yeah.
it's like a Swedish thing.
And
like
you almost think
like
for a
good luck.
second,
Yeah.
oh, is it actually a Swedish thing?
Yeah.
Right. But you kind of almost think when she pukes it up or does it spits it out, they're like, what are they going to do? And then they all just laugh. She's part of them then.
Yeah.
And she can see like quite a literal distance.
You're odd one out.
Yeah.
Well,
and he's the only one.
Christian's he's having a terrible time. He's just had that
He's
guy.
having a bad trip.
That guy clapped in his face. He doesn't know what the hell's going on.
And maybe
he's not like compass mentis enough to even look at her and adore her like everybody else is doing.
Or
I think he's so out of his mind he doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah,
I don't think he has any emotions going through him other than panic and confusion.
You reckon he's just completely
I think he just doesn't know what's going on,
completely.
yeah. And then,
in my opinion, anyway. But
well, he does say what's going on, and then that guy claps.
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Yeah.
The food that was on the big tables, by the way, was actual food, and it was left there for days and days, and they still had to keep repeating the films.
Oh, nice.
The scenes, and so a lot of the scenes later on, because I think it was filmed majoritively in order. It is actual rotting food with like maggots and stuff in front of them. That's part of like when they're acting at the table. Yeah.
So then she goes off in a carriage, and Christian goes the other way.
Yeah.
He goes into
like
a dark. He's very dark. His path now is really dark. Hers is lit with fire and a carriage. She's like the queen. She's the kind of Alice in Wonderland or something.
Yeah. And
Cinderella,
Cinderella.
And when she goes off in a group, right, a group of similar age women, and he has to go there by himself. So there's another kind of.
And then there's the masked.
The masked guy. Yeah.
And then the powder Viagra, whatever the hell that is, like to give him
potency.
Yeah.
Floats right in the.
He does. It floats right in. Yeah.
Well, she kind of presents herself to him, doesn't she?
Yeah.
And then he kind of goes in. It is very without all of the pageantry of it and everything, like the women and the celebration element. It is just a bit like putting 2 cattle, like something off Clarkson's farm,
to breed,
putting into like a cow.
It's like corralling, right?
Yeah. It's literally like farmyard. It happens in a barn. It's animalistic. If you take away this human element and this social constructs of what they've constructed, you're left with 2 animals.
Well,
he's for a purpose. Like
he's so drugged up and lost.
There's
and
no
confused
pleasure.
That all he needs is like subtle encouragement, and then he's just following the line, right?
He seems to, at least for me, like have this moment of awakening in the middle, where he's like, "Oh, what the fuck am I doing?" And then he's kind of forced to finish, right? But then he runs away in revulsion.
He has,
and I think that's very telling, and it really just goes to show just how drugged up he was, in my opinion. But like the mural that you see about halfway through the movie, where they play this love story in reverse.
Yes, she's There's blood.
There's blood.
In the cup.
She bleeds into the cup at the end, so it does kind of.
So it's like
perhaps she is on a period. Like
that's what I'm thinking.
Oh yeah. Because it's the discolored glass that he drinks when he
and it's the start of her coming into the spring of her life in a way, I guess. It's like her in the learning process. She's
like late spring if she's 15, right? She'll be going into summer soon,
So it's kind of that moment where like spring and summer meet.
Then it becomes like a full on like final act of a slasher movie.
It's like Halloween where Laurie finds the body upside down.
Exactly, yeah.
In the cupboard. It becomes that.
So does he find Simon first? I think
yes. No, the foot. The foot of Josh. So in the
he
plan.
realizes that Pele's been like burying the bodies there, or the other.
Yeah.
When they're doing gardening,
they're
actually just like covering up the murders, right? Yeah.
Then he goes into the other shed and the lungs. And is he still alive? Am I getting the vibe that the lungs are still
Go on,
alive?
talk about the Blood Eagle, Mike. I know you want to.
Go on.
Well, no, it was originally supposedly a real thing, right?
Apparently,
I don't know whether it's folklore
Apparently,
or it's
yeah.
actual documented evidence.
A ritual
Yeah.
Viking torture. Apparently, you pull the lungs out through the back, and supposedly, if you do it right, you can still breathe.
Yeah,
But I think it
seems very difficult.
It's been chalked up
but...
to literary invention. I believe is.
We need the really X-rated MythBusters to see if they can keep someone alive when they do it.
I think
I'd love to see that's what an episode that would be.
Yeah.
My God.
just go through volunteer after volunteer. Homeless people. Or something.
They need to bring Mengele
Your family,
back.
your family can have 10 grand if you go through this.
Yes, it's possible that the Horger perfected doing it, so the guy's still alive. But personally, I just think he's dead.
Yeah, and he was tripping,
he's just
right?
tripping, and it's just a nice.
We didn't
visual
actually see
the...
anything other than his lungs moving, right? I don't think
I don't think so.
No.
Mouth moves.
I don't think so.
He looks to look for that, but we don't see that.
To be honest
Yeah.
with you, I was expecting a jump scare when I first saw it. When he goes underneath him and looks underneath,
and
I was
then
like, oh, he's going to go, he's
Well,
going to do a breath or something.
I think that didn't happen is quite telling too, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, yeah, we did miss the fact that in this whole sequence, Danny sees through the keyhole
Yeah,
What-
that's right.
what Christian is doing. I saw it as almost the final betrayal of Christian. She has no context
No.
to what's actually happening.
Yeah.
This is the nail in the coffin, really,
Yeah.
isn't it? And it's completely...
And she's disgusted.
Yeah.
Well, it's realization of things she already knows, right? She knows that this guy isn't supportive. She knows that this guy isn't to be trusted. She knows that this guy would leave her behind if he had the opportunity to leave her behind. So it's just final visual cemented confirmation that this guy is not the guy she should be dating. I love the effect of the flower that we were about to
Yes,
get to.
the breathing.
The visual effect.
Yeah, the breathing flower is really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
With this whole sequence with where she brushes when they're sat down before all of this, where she's sat down on the throne of her.
Oh, and it's just
and she's
rubbing
like,
her arms
"Whoa,"
up against
like-
it. Yeah.
She's
Not
She's
only
become
is she
one.
integrated with the cult, but she's also integrated with
Nature.
everything
She's
around.
integrated
her.
with the whole
Yeah.
religion in a
Yeah.
way.
Well, when she first does drugs on that hill before she even enters, the first thing that she sees are roots in her foot, rooting her to that place right at that time. It's a recurring kind of theme in her tripping,
Yeah.
these nature themes. And there's another one with the grass going through her, again attaching her to her time and place exactly where she is, amongst these people.
Yeah. It's like a visual representation of her openness to her surroundings.
Yes,
right? She wants to be
yeah.
ingratiated
Yeah.
with the people around her, and she finds it difficult at the start because she's surrounded by people that she can't integrate with or doesn't feel like she has any integration with, which is Christian. But it takes on another level when she's around the cult and she's getting nothing but positive interactions with the people around her, so she can fully feel integrated with the things around her.
In a way, can you blame her?
No, this is a person that's gone through a tragedy.
Yeah. That's why it's a
and
fairy tale.
in general has had no support for at least 6-7 months and no promise of support because a relationship is doomed, a family's dead, and she doesn't really know what she wants to do. She needs a safety net, and she isn't afforded one in America because of the broken system. So she goes to Sweden and she's taken up by this cult, and it's the perfect community to shelter a broken person.
Yeah, so Christian, after the Blood Eagle, he gets
They give him something that paralyzes him. We
yeah.
don't know permanently or if it's temporary.
Yeah.
Or how much time passes. Well, actually, we have no.
Or whether they even care that it does any damage to him.
Yeah.
It might actually be damage
it might
for
destroy
life.
his nerves. Who knows?
Yeah.
And there's some time passed because now Danny is in this ridiculous chair, sitting there and in all
It's pretty cool. Chair.
covered in. No, it is. I'm not saying that. I'm not slagging off the chair.
How dare you insult the chair?
But she is there in all her glory with.
She's wearing
the
full
flowers, the full flower suit
yeah.
thing. Dress.
Yeah, and when she moves later on in it, she looks a bit like a slug.
I was about to say she does look like a slug.
Yeah.
She really does. Again, another earthly creature though.
I mean, all the creatures are earthly.
Yeah, but literally in the earth, in the ground, like slugging around down there.
Yeah.
Slugging around in the ground.
Yeah.
Oh,
As
Danny.
they do.
And they talk about the offering to their father, the 9 human lives that need to be sacrificed, and that the May Queen gets the last pick.
Yep.
But there's also like the national lottery bit where they put out someone's number and like.
I love that the camera follows the ball all the way down.
It's pretty slam dunk at this point, though.
Yeah.
But she does look at him with the most betrayed eyes. Like she looks at him directly at him, like paralyzed in that old schooly wheelchair thing, and like there's almost this hatred, the betrayal.
But
that face that she makes.
At the same time,
iconic.
she's kind of a good person compared to everybody else there. She's not going to choose Swedish man A, who she doesn't know. She's not going to condemn him to death. So I feel like it is an informed,
and she has
by the cult.
She's just seen her boyfriend like having sex with a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
As well, without any context or the drugs or anything like that.
After like years and years of a bad relationship.
Yeah. It's like the cherry on top of fucking hell, this person. Like, except for that is an extreme example of that.
Yeah. Well, the cult did all this pushing, but I feel like if they'd given her that choice, first of all, she should have just chosen him anyway. It's just an asshole. Random Swedish man or your boyfriend that's an asshole. Yeah. Boyfriend that's an asshole.
So this whole bit at the end is pretty harrowing, isn't it?
Yeah, so they so she picks Christian and then they
bear suit.
So this like the creepy part of the thing with the bear is like they got like just some elder village, like elder guy in the village just like teaching the kids.
Oh yeah, the bear.
Just how to gut the bear and
intestines.
Make sure you don't cut it here.
Yeah, it's just like just the banality of it, like just how normal it is, like, and that there's little kids running around, and it's not specifically like that they're cutting open a bear, but what the bear's going to be used for. You know what I mean?
Well, it's how we interpret that as well, because hunting cultures will teach their young how to do that without it having the context that it might be a human
but
next.
it's not just what they're doing literally to the bear, but it's like what that bear will be used for, like just how normal it all is. Like they're treating like cutting that bear open just like hunting a bear or just something normal.
Yeah, but at the same time, these children are going to be taught that anyone that's not part of the community isn't really a human being, right?
They throw Christian on the table like a slab of meat as well, don't they?
Yeah.
So Christian is dead at that point.
Christian's not dead.
He's not dead.
He's not dead.
He's alive.
He's alive when they burn him.
He's alive.
He is alive.
Yeah.
Do we get confirmation of that? I forget.
Because
his eyes are
his
eyes are moving when he's in the best.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
He's kind of there, but he's got no expressions. But he is moving. Like he is obviously alive, I think.
Yeah.
So who are the sacrifices? Then we got Christian. We got the
two.
There's only 3 living sacrifices.
Yeah.
The rest are.
You've got the 2 72-year-olds.
Yeah. From the cult. Connie and Simon as well, who are dead. As you said before, Connie was wearing that outfit from the lake ceremony.
Yeah.
So I wonder if
the presumption is
they drowned her or they kept her underwater at least. So her body looks kind of like water bloated, so maybe they just kept her underwater.
What's quite shocking imagery to me in that scene is the way Mark's face is on that scarecrow, and then they just throw him up. Against the wall, and they just move his head a bit. That to me is
very
like
it's very uncanny.
Yes, weird
because it's like a doll. The proportions are wrong, and it's got a human face on it. It's very uncanny and creepy. So we got Josh and Mark as well, and then the final 2 cult members are the volunteers, right? So
who get the yew tree.
Extract for pain.
Yeah.
Which isn't super effective.
No.
But it's traditional.
But
they still don't try to escape though. They are believers. They volunteered.
They believe
for it,
all the way to the end, don't they?
They volunteered all the way till one of them's on fire next to the other one, and he still doesn't try and get.
Because I was sort of expecting one of them to have a regretful face in that moment where they regret, like, why did I do that? And then sudden realization that the cult is wrong, but there's none of that. They do just stay there, don't they?
But if they have no external influence in their lives. This is all they've known.
Yeah.
This is all they've ever known. They're gonna regard anything they do against this as a personal failure right before they die.
And then they feel the pain of their comrades. don't
Yeah,
they?
so the cult members inside start screaming from the fire. Danny's like walking. Now she's
she
like,
looks
she's
like a slug, doesn't she?
Yeah,
in this
she's-
moment?
she's like retching.
Yeah.
She's like retching, I guess, from like the
Yeah.
realization of what she's done. She looks like a monster with the fire in the background. But then the very final shot, like, is her face, and she smiles, right?
And how do you
Yeah.
interpret that?
It's freedom, right? It's
It's the fairy tale ending
Yeah.
for her. Yeah, it's just a very dark future. that she's
successful
gonna have.
breakup and what feels like a family around
Yeah.
her. And maybe she'll feel that for the rest of her life until she gets a stoop to pass or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
A stupa.
I do wonder what happens when a visa expires. Things like that.
Somehow I don't think the Swedish police are going to be able to find
Track
her
down
in that
that
little
fucker.
community.
But
Yeah.
do you think they? This is the one thing I kind of would think they live somewhat normal lives. They don't always dress up in what they dress up in, and they
Who knows? Honestly,
Yeah,
who
but
knows? Who knows?
presented.
Like they do watch
it's
Austin
presented
Powers on-
so self-sufficient that
yeah.
I mean, I refuted the fact that Austin Powers was there for anything other than the outside.
No.
I think they're completely self-sufficient.
Another question is, how did they get away with it for so long? I mean, I guess like them trekking through the.
Because they're grabbing
wood.
people from international.
And they hike like
Places.
20k to
I
get
guess
there or
that's
something, don't
the
they?
excuse, right? That they hike so much that they just can't be found. I guess.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
unknown.
Yeah.
These people go missing all the time when
Yeah.
they go on like hiking trips in foreign countries. And if they do it once a year, that's small numbers compared to the overall amount of people that just go missing in the woods and
Yeah.
Get
Yeah.
lost.
I guess. Yeah.
yeah.
It's also interesting when you see Mare again. She's wearing red. She's a bit wearing red like you are. It's a bit like that, and with red lipstick. It's like she's become a woman.
Oh, I noticed that as well. She's got the lipstick on.
Yeah.
After. Yeah.
There's something,
Yeah.
and obviously she's got the ginger hair as well. It adds to
Yeah.
this like
She feels
flame.
very red.
She's-
Yeah.
Mm.
Like she is a woman now.
Yeah.
She's having a period. She's in this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next
gonna
phase
be
of
gonna
her
be a
life.
mother. Entering the
yeah.
summer of her life. hopefully.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
presented as like a transformational
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
She seems, at least in that quick shot where she's wearing the lipstick, much more confident as well. I don't know. That wasn't really through her action. I just
no,
felt that she
absolutely.
looked like she had purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then-
she's achieved her aim.
Yeah, yeah.
She's probably been brought up to look forward to that / dread that as like an obstacle in her life.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
she needs to overcome to become an adult.
And there you go. That's
the end of the plot.
Midsommar. Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's a hell of a plot. And
Yeah.
I think that's why we can talk about it for so long, because there is so much packed in.
Yeah, and it's also 2 hours 40 minutes. So
It's 2 hours 40
There's a lot
minutes.
to analyze. Yeah,
Yeah. Literally a lot of films to talk about.
yeah,
And
But also so much depth to what is there too, right?
yeah, and interpretational, ambiguous.
any standout performances in there?
Well,
I mean,
I think there's
the
an
obvious,
obvious one.
the obvious
Florence Pugh,
standout
yeah.
is
Florence
Florence
Pugh,
Pugh.
yeah.
Yeah, just brilliant throughout. Her like presentation of grief is incredibly strong. I think Toni Collette in Midsommar is Hereditary is better, but yeah, Florence Pugh is great.
It's like of that caliber though. You know, it's a worthy successor, I think, to that Toni Collette
Yeah, for
performance.
sure. And
Yeah.
Ari Aster was asked in one of the interviews. I think this was in the behind the scenes about Florence Pugh's how he helped Florence Pugh to give the presentation she did, and he basically said like I didn't need to help. She wasn't like trained. She didn't go to like an acting college or anything like that.
No drama school.
She's just got she wasn't formally taught. She just got the skills.
Really?
And you've got to respect that
Yeah.
more in a way, because there's so many, you go through so many years of training when you do that at drama school. Perhaps it leads, when you don't go down that path and you do a different sort of way into the acting world, you have an ability to get deeper into something. Like you
Yeah.
can find more real world.
I put it in the same kind
Contexts.
of the same kind of realm as musicians that don't know how to read music, right?
Mm.
Or they don't have a full understanding of music theory, but they just have a
They
natural
feel it.
talent
You can
as to
feel it.
what sounds good. I think not knowing a lot about acting, obviously, I think it's a
Well,
similar thing.
It's a creative
Yeah.
process, right? And in
Yeah.
a way, when you're well educated, you can't help but have your creative process biased by what you've learned, right, and what's come
Yeah.
before. But when you're
But
unencumbered,
your greatest influences are what you've experienced and what you haven't experienced. So
And so now I saw that performance by Florence. I mentioned it earlier. Is just how guttural it is, how
Yeah.
much depth, how
she's
she can-
ugly crying. Yeah.
they're so
Yeah.
ugly at times,
Yeah.
and it's just there's so many layers to it, and as you say, to a grief, there's so many layers in that, and but she manages to show you it in her performance. I think she shows you those layers, like you see on her face at times. There's deep regret and deep grief and confusion and all sorts. Like you see
Yeah.
it all, and it's just a fantastic performance.
I think my favorite part of her performance is the transitionary points when she has a panic attack, the way that she switches just like that, and just the physicality, her physicality changes, and like she'll get up and have to like remove herself from a situation, and her breathing changes, and I just find that very. How many times would you say that happens? Like 3 or 4 times in the movie.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I would agree. I think the strongest facets of her performances are the non-verbal ones. They're when she's reacting emotionally and she's not saying anything. We're merely getting the way she looks, the way her body acts, and how she's breathing, what we hear. I think that's the strongest parts of the performance.
I think she's fully backed by an incredible supporting cast.
Yeah,
as well.
There's not a bad performance.
I don't think they stand out like Florence Pugh.
No.
But I think that for the characters they're meant to play, I believe them all the way.
Yeah.
Like William Jackson Harper, who incidentally is the only American in the cast.
Right.
Yeah, you could say that
he's of course like
somewhat similar.
he's famous
Yeah.
for playing a similarly studious academic character in The Good Place, which is where I knew him from. I think in my first watch, I was somehow primed to like him a lot more just because I was kind of implanting that character inside Josh.
But Chidi's kind of an asshole as well, at least to start with.
Yeah, but he's not Josh. Like he's not Josh
No.
at all.
And he does come round, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Chidi.
And then it was after taking kind of a big break and then watching it again for this. Like half my notes about him were like, "What an asshole!" Like, I remembered Christian and I remembered Mark being a fool, but I found Josh to be the most like annoying in a way.
Yeah.
And I felt, and I mean, I don't know if this is intentional, probably not, but I just felt that personally, I was his fame is that other character that kind of at first glance is kind
it
of
definitely
similar.
has like an impact. Right?
Yeah, and he's almost
It's like for a long
playing
time when you
against
watch a
that.
Daniel Radcliffe movie, you only see Harry Potter.
Yeah,
Or you can't help to be influenced by seeing them in this.
Yeah, but it would be
famous
like
popular
if Daniel Radcliffe played another boy wizard, but he was the villain.
Pele. I think we need to give Pele his own
Yeah,
section.
Yeah.
Just
Well, he's not part of the main group, right?
and he does. What's interesting for me in the film is that he almost disappears after halfway point. He becomes less relevant.
As time
to the
goes
story.
on, he's more and more just a part of the cult. He's not the face of the cult.
He's just another pawn within the.
Yeah,
within
exactly.
he's doing
on
background
the
things.
board.
He's digging.
Yeah. He doesn't talk as much. He has less influence over Danny, or his influence is already there in a sustained
Yeah,
now.
because he doesn't need to, basically.
No.
Like, he's done his job, they are there, and after a certain point goes on, they're not going to leave there.
So do you think there is anything redeemable about the character of Pele?
It depends.
Is there anything real?
Viewpoint you actually have in terms of assessing his morality? Like, from Western morality, he's brought those people to be killed by the cult. But from his own point of view, he's been raised to believe that this is what needs to be done, and he's done what needs to be done. He's only doing his job.
Yeah, but very
To a
few
certain-
people like consider themselves the villain. But I mean, we as the audience, that's what Joe was asking, right? Is like us as an audience member. Like, I think he's a bad guy.
I think
very-
he could have chose better people to be slaughtered, and therefore you should be commended for choosing almost all horrible people to be killed.
It's interesting what you say about he won't see himself as the villain as such, and he's potentially not. The fact that he had never had a chance, did he? Like he's never had a chance of being how we would see morality.
His ills and our moral problems with him are just the ills and moral problems with the cult.
But it's like, but you could say that for everyone. We've said that for Christian about him, his exploits within the film. That there is an influence within these characters that must go back generations and generations.
Yeah, correct. There's always
they're all in fact
route.
They're all victims.
Everyone's
in a
a victim of something.
Yeah,
but
most serial killers were abused as children. But eventually people take responsibility for their actions, right?
But there does come a point where there is a point of no return.
Yeah. What do you think?
It's a moral question, really.
I don't know. I actually quite like him in a way because he's almost brainwashed me.
Well, exactly. That's the point, right? Just like the cult brainwashes the audience.
And I almost felt there was a sincerity to the scene with Danny in that bedroom where they hold hands.
See, I find him creepy and uncomfortable when he does that.
It's interesting.
I think there's like that makes me more uncomfortable than a lot of the other things that the cult do in the first like half to 2/3 of the movie, because it's clear that he has the position of power and he's just manipulating her in a sexual manner, in a partnership manner.
I mean, like, would you say the same thing about Ingmar?
With
Dave's favourite boy, Ingmar.
Yeah, we need to go back to Ingmar. Well, because I think that they're parallel characters, and the Connie Simon relationship is paralleled with Danny and it's a similar love triangle and a similar goal. But Ingmar.
But it went the opposite way.
Exactly, but it's the same. It's exactly the same.
He's invasive. He's got no reason to behave the way he does when she's in distress.
I'm not sure it might have been originally predatory. Like when they went out and he thought it was a date and she wasn't. She was like, "Oh, actually, no, that isn't." And then they got together afterwards with the.
Yeah, it's very possible, that.
But I also reckon then that was a man jealous of another man, like who then got territorial and thought, "That's mine. She is mine," like a property type thing.
Yeah. And if I can't have her, no one's going to have her. I'm
and
going
then
to kill you all. And myself.
Because it's already within their culture that they make sacrifices. So it's like, wow, these two screwed me over. I'm the victim here. Let me do this. Whereas I think Pele maybe saw an opportunity within the sacrifices, which he was going to do by bringing them across. He almost sees an opportunity to keep Danny for himself, which is really predatory.
Yeah.
You were going to talk about the film reaction, weren't you?
Oh, yes, I was, Joe. Yes, I was.
Yeah, we all knew that.
I just have a few quotes from some of the professional reviews. Apparently, it got 48 million worldwide on a $9 million budget. That's pretty good, yeah.
Do we know the budget, including marketing?
It's probably double. You almost
normally they say just double it.
Double.
They just double. That's what they say, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well received critically, just like Hereditary, but even more divisive with audiences than Hereditary, yeah. I personally liked it much less than Hereditary on my first watch, but it sat in my brain longer, like I said. And it's also, I think I've watched it more than Hereditary now as well. Yeah, Screen Rant writer Mark Burrell said it was one of the most polarizing horror movies of 2019.
Yeah.
However, he attributed the uneven audience reception to negative aspects such as length, lack of subtlety, derivativeness, poor use of genre cliches, its over-stylization.
This is a very strange list.
I know.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah, tendency to be over-serious, implausible plot, and one-dimensionality of the characters.
Christ almighty.
Some of those are just wrong.
I know.
Teenager 5 in a slasher. Those are one-dimensional. You barely even know their names.
I can see...
Whereas we've talked for a while about some of these characters. We've argued whether Josh or Mark is more of an asshole.
Yeah, I mean...
If they were one-dimensional, that would be a null and void debate. That reviewer is one-dimensional.
yeah. Who was it?
Mark something.
Please not command.
Mark Burrell.
Mark Burrell, you're one-dimensional, man.
Yeah.
Okay, John DeForest.
Mark, if you're out there.
One of our many fans.
Yeah, there's another listener gone. -1.
Well, no, I'm -2 now. I was in with this one before.
Yeah.
John DeFore of the Hollywood Reporter described the film as the horror equivalent of a destination wedding, which I love. But still a trip worth taking. I thought that was great.
Okay.
Eric Cohn, IndieWire, summarized the film as a perverse breakup movie, which I think we covered that.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
And that was, his intention.
Well, that's just a description of the movie. It's
Yeah,
positive or
Perverse
negative.
breakup movie.
Incidentally, Aster, he was talking about the legacy that he hopes to see in the movie, because obviously that's only 5 years old now. But he wants the legacy of the movie to be the movie that people watch when they're going through breakups, which I can kind of understand. I haven't gone through a breakup myself since watching it, but I can definitely kind of understand the catharsis.
Yeah. I mean, if I was left to my own devices, I might be able to think of movies that would be better, but I can't.
I can kind of see it, because you watch it and then you put yourself in the shoes of Danny.
Yeah.
And Christian is such an unlikable character, but it's from a perspective of someone who feels betrayed by their partner. And if you look at it through that lens, then potentially they have no redeemable qualities. Like, why was I with them in the first place? And you come to terms with
exactly.
that.
Danny doesn't have any negative qualities either, because we're somewhat seeing this relationship from her perspective.
Which means that's the director's perspective as well. And that's where they were in life at the time. So it's interesting then that at the end where they burn, like, people say extreme things when they leave a relationship.
Yeah.
They go, "Oh, I hope they die," and they don't actually mean it. And they say these extreme terms with taken out of context. But within this movie, you could potentially navigate everything that you hate about this person into they die at the end. And then you also get the scene where you've got other peoples and you've got this breathing, like the earth and the grounded being part of it, because breathing is, we haven't actually really mentioned the breathing.
Oh yeah,
but it's a huge part of it all the way through, from the end of their lives to the beginning of a life, to the breeding process, to where they feel happy or where they feel sad. It's used all the time throughout. Having a moment, it's like a moment where you breathe and you go, "Oh, right,
yeah."
Here
it's
we
like
are."
an emotive response to what's happening and what's about to happen.
I think maybe the most startling use of it is potentially the two that know they're going to die.
Oh yeah.
And they do the sort of singing, but also very earthly voices. It's like their final, and she's almost in tears as it happens, and he's still very.
What did you think?
Together.
What did you think was going to happen on your first watch in that scene? Do you remember?
No, I wasn't really sure. I thought that maybe they were the elders, just the elders. I didn't expect them then to go off. And when they went up to the cliff, I was like, "Oh, here we go. This is going to be something."
Yeah.
This is where the film turns. This is where. This is the moment where this, with the illusion is shattered, somewhat.
I wonder is Ateshtapa a real thing, and if so, there would have been some cheaties in the audience that knew what it was.
Oh yeah, that's
in actuality,
true.
and that they told the people around.
Google
them,
that quickly, Dave, if it's real.
Yeah,
I
think that
because they did mention it before
supposedly,
we saw
like
it,
cliff diving is real.
Yeah, just check that out.
They're making me spell the hardest words.
Yeah. You can't text to speech that one.
I'm not sure, yeah. Is it a valid Scrabble word?
That would be a good one.
In Nordic folklore, the Ättestupa is a cliff where elderly people were said to leap or be thrown to death.
No, so it is a real folkloric thing historically.
Yeah. Within,
I mean, we need to do probably a second episode on the ideas and the folklore behind it. There's probably so much more depth to that.
We
can pull in a lot more.
Well, no, I know that he wove in like and the soundtrack as well. That electronica guy, he used like traditional. He was inspired by traditional music to like weave it in to like his style of like doom electronica.
Trademark Dave.
Yeah, trademark Dave. Yeah.
Mike, final thoughts on the film?
I think personally, not a lot. I don't rewatch a lot of films. And when I do rewatch a lot of films I tend to like them less, bizarrely, purely because of the lack of newness and feeling like because I know what's coming, there's less of a grip on me for the narrative. But Midsommar isn't that. I think it is a movie with strengths that persist on the rewatch. And even though it's got such a long runtime, I think it sustains it brilliantly. And a lot like Hereditary, I think it's a horror movie that's going to last, and there'll be people 30 years from now talking about it as one of the best films of the 2010s. Yeah, even though it's right at the end. Yeah.
I guess for me, it's kind of like it's one of our first episodes, and I've not seen a lot of the same films you have or experienced it. But for me, it makes me want to watch more folk horror. It makes me want to watch more by the same director. I watch Hereditary again because I don't think I took it all in the first time round. And it brings a whole new element of horror to me. And it's interesting because it kind of fits in a little bit with my past of the drama stuff and finding meaning, like creating, devising performances. And I find similarities when I'm looking at certain moments within the film. I'm writing them down going, this is good because this means this. And so it actually fits in with my background. It's a really creative horror film. And I really appreciate it for its creativity. And
he's built a world in terms of building lore in a movie. It's more of a TV show thing to establish a world, or rather like multiple, movies tied into one, like Star Wars, etc. To build up a world. But I think he's quite successfully established this community.
I mean, a large part of our discussion has been kind of like hypothesizing practices of the cult, like really in a way trying to piece together things
wanting more lore,
that we couldn't
and meaning,
which means the world building or building up of this community has been successful.
Exactly.
And I'd also appreciate within the film that when we've talked about it, we have moments where we agree on a lot of the stuff, but there's bits where we go, well, no, I think that character is worse than that. I think Christian is more culpable for his actions than perhaps you two do in certain scenes and stuff. So it's interesting how we can watch it and feel so many different things.
When we're talking about moral questions, there's always going to be different presumptions of how the characters, because it's not a novel. You don't get to hear the inner workings of the minds of these characters. It's inherently ambiguous in a movie. So
it also goes back to what I was saying on the introduction podcast, why I love horror film and want to know more, because you get to still have this creativity which is lacking in other genres of film. Like there is still this idea that you can have $9 million and go out there and create something batshit crazy.
Yeah, I mean, like the horror movie genre, specifically the slasher framework, like that he took that skeleton
and created something
and
very
then stretched
different.
a breakup movie over it.
Yeah.
Despite now watching it 4 times and also, kind of like reading around a little bit, finding out some behind the scenes stuff and reading some kind of interpretations online. Every single time I watch it, I find something new and almost in some cases an entirely new lens to look through the film. And yeah, a little bit like Mike as well. I like rewatching more than you, but do very often find that if there's something I really liked the first time, that most of the luster is gone on the second time, because once the kind of mystery or the engagement with the plot, once you're not trying to guess where it's going.
Yeah.
Once
things
that's
are
gone,
always less exciting when you know.
Yeah, exactly. I honestly don't think that knowing the plot even hurts it very much at all. But I think you could watch it and then watch it immediately again, like the same day, and get so much more on a second watch, despite having just seen it just a few hours ago. But there's so much to pick up on a rewatch. There's so much to talk about with the characters, and I really find this thing that he's done here with the slasher genre really interesting.
And on that one, we should leave it there. So cheers, Mike. Thanks for coming.
Cheers, Joe.
Thanks for coming to your own house.
Thanks for coming to my house as well. Yeah.
And Dave, thanks for coming to Mike's house.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for inviting me to Mike's house.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you, Mike, for letting me invite Dave to Mike's house.
No worries.
To your
Joe.
house, I should say.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting Dave to my house, Joe.
That's okay. Yeah.
Oh, you're
Mike's
very welcome.
Yeah.
All right. See you later.
Cheers.
Bye. See ya.